Hey, what's up? Welcome to Basecraft. So I just set up a Patreon page for the podcast and all the stuff I'm doing. So if you want to support me and can afford the price of a pint or a coffee a month, follow the link in the description and follow me on Patreon or become a patron on Patreon. I really appreciate that. I'm going to do a lot more stuff this summer with the podcast and my YouTube. I've just been really busy the last year because I talked about it a bit on the podcast, but not a lot. But I just started a master's in bass in Cork School of Music, so I'm studying under Noel Barrett down there, and it's going really well. I'm learning loads, but obviously this kind of stuff took a back seat. But I'm off for the whole summer, so I want to go and maybe visit some people from the podcast around Ireland, do some trips to them and hang out with them and make some cool videos and just generally make some more content for this. So yeah, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow me on that and support me with, the price of a coffee once a month is pretty much what I'm looking for. So today my guest is Todd Bowers. Todd was the bass player in the Steepwater Band for 20 years, their class blues rock band, and he's now currently the bass player in the Davy Knowles Band. So a really good chat, really interesting. It's a long one, guys. I know I'm doing a lot of long ones lately. I don't know, we just seem to get into it talking about bass and just time flies. Really enjoyable, lots of great info in there, and near the end Todd takes out his Ripper bass and gives us some samples of what it sounds like, which is awesome because I'd love to get one of them myself. I kind of messed up. I didn't have my mic on, so my audio isn't fantastic, but Todd sounds amazing and he's doing most of the talking, so it's all good. Hopefully it doesn't affect your listening pleasure. So yeah, enjoy the episode, follow me on Patreon, and I'll talk to you soon.
How's it going over there, all right?
Yeah, good, yeah. Just getting my stuff together here. Just got back from a tour. I was in England.
Oh,
Did,
cool.
So I just did three gigs, but one big one. It was like a blues fest, HRH Blues. You ever play one of their events? They do like all the genres, and they sell out all their gigs because the tickets are really cheap, but then you pay for accommodation. So at the festival, it was like 2,000 people, so it was a good
Oh,
gig.
cool. Was that indoors or outdoors?
Yeah, the O2 in Sheffield. So
Oh, wow.
it
Cool.
was good one. Yeah, you know yourself. We played a 60 cap venue the night before, so
Uh-huh.
60 people sold out.
60
So,
to 2,000 the next day.
yeah,
That's a big difference.
that's kind of what happens when you're in a blues band, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Every day is different, it seems like. Yeah, it kind of depends on the promoters and who every country kind of seems to have its little niches of that kind of music, like the whether it's popular or not.
Yeah, I think you've traveled away more than I have though, because you did so many gigs with Steepwater, like, and you went to every nook and cranny of Europe, I'd say, did you?
Definitely of Western Europe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did a little bit in Eastern Europe, some Polish states in Poland and Czech Republic and stuff, but Western Europe for sure. We hit a lot. Yeah. Especially Spain.
Yeah, oh yeah, Spain is just. I think we talked about this before. We through email, we were both saying we want to live in Spain.
Yeah.
Someday.
I could move there in a heartbeat. Except my Spanish is terrible, so I'd have to work on that.
Yeah, same here. I go there a good bit, even just for holidays, but I'm fairly slow at picking up the old languages. But
Uh-huh.
that's kind of, I think that's just an English speaking, people who speak English as their first language. We're just really lazy at learning other languages because all the media we consume is already in the language we speak. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Where in other countries they get a lot of English television, so they
yeah.
learn English through television or movies and it's not like I'm sitting around watching Spanish television much. I should.
No. There's a few good shows, but no, not as good as like Breaking Bad or something by HBO to
Yeah, yeah.
to watch.
I guess I could watch those with Spanish subtitles, right?
Yeah, you pick up a bit.
Yeah. Since I've already watched them once, I can kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, you get
But
some kind of gist of it.
yeah.
Is this your music room you're in? This is your base where you do all your practice?
Yeah, yeah. This is my little. It's my wife and I live in a one bedroom apartment, but there's two. There's a bedroom and then kind of like a TV room and then this room, and I kind of took this room over as like my. It's a little studio, yeah,
Yeah.
practice room. Do my computer work on it and recording and that stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of gone overkill here because I don't live in a city like you live. I live in the middle of like in a tiny town where
Uh-huh.
like I can afford to have a place, a big space, but really all I need is the laptop and two or three bases. But I've gone a bit insane with the amount of stuff I have.
Yeah, you got a good collection back there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I need to get a stand up a double bass at some point, but I don't think it'll I don't have room for it here.
No, they're a disaster. That's a cheap one, and I even broke the scroll off it there 2 years ago, but I managed to fix it. But
Oh,
it actually
really?
sounds decent for like was €500, which is as cheap you can get a double bass for, you know.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's pretty. But I had a guest on before, and he was saying if you're getting one of the electric stand-ups, don't cheap out. Get like a proper Yamaha or something because their cheap ones are awful. He said they're just not worth the money at all. Like.
Okay. That's good to know.
But I'm playing it a bit lately. I'm doing kind of monthly. I do a gig with some friends. We play mainly John Prine songs.
Oh,
So
cool.
that's sure. There's the chord change are so simple. I'm getting away with it, barely being able to
Yeah.
play the double bass.
And just playing a bunch of ones and fives and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't really
Some
be
little
too
walking stuff.
yeah, very rarely, but I wouldn't be too familiar with country music. But you kind of once you start listening to one genre, you get the kind of the gist of the vocabulary, don't you? Even for music
Sure.
like country, like.
Yeah, a lot of the changes are the same or just flip-flopped, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So there's always like one kind of. I think most songs have one thing that makes them unique, like something curveball. Sometimes,
Uh-huh.
like. But you're so just to introduce it, you're a blues. Would you say you're mainly a blues bass player, blues and rock? That's your kind of your
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, I guess that's definitely what that's my back pocket of vocabulary is rock and roll and blues and um it's just the music that I've kind of always gravitated to when I was
Mm,
younger. Was the music I even when because I grew up in the '80s, so a lot of the stuff I was listening to was kind of more in the hair metal genre. But I even like I got sucked into more of the bluesier type bands, the Aerosmiths and the because they were huge in the '80s,
mm.
with their big comeback and some of those bands. So, and I think it was just a natural evolution to really get into the blues and I mean ZZ Top was probably one of the first groups I think I remember getting on my own and kind of
Yeah,
like getting exposed to with it when they came out with Legs and all that in the 80s,
it's class.
and then but then they were the first band I went back and bought their older records
Mm.
and just listening to them and those records had so much more of a raw sound than the polished 80s songs
Yeah, they're
and the
class. I
big
love Jesus Just Left Chicago and all those ones off the first
yeah yeah
album.
yeah
Brilliant.
and yeah waiting for the bus, is that it? Yeah, but yeah, just and I remember listening to 'em when I was younger thinking like, God, this is so heavy, like
And you
that
never
that
got into the hair metal, even though like it was so prominent in the '80s. You were never in a band doing those kind of tunes, right? It was just always rock bands.
me.
Yeah.
Well, in the '90s, the first band that the very first band I joined out of high school, because when I started, it was kind of like when like my buddies in my high school were starting a band and they needed a bass player, and they were like, "You kind of know how to play guitar, right?" And I'm like,
Hmm.
"A little bit, and why don't you buy a bass and play bass?" And that was basically the beginning of
Yeah.
me starting to play, and we were just playing covers. We were playing like some probably very poorly Van Halen and Aerosmith and some Motley Crue and bands like that, and then when I was in college, I met Joe, the drummer, Joe Winters from Steepwater. I met him in college, and he was really into like bluesy rock and blues. And then like Guns N' Roses were a little bit more on the bluesier side, and then the Black Crowes came out, and that kind of was like the big kind of direction turn that I was like, they just had so much of a better sound than those '80s
Hmm.
rock bands, to me. It sounded more real, more authentic. You can hear the guitars. Everything wasn't super processed and overproduced.
And
You
what did
know,
you do in college? Like, were you always going to pursue the music, or was it kind of
um,
you
I
fell
took
into it kind
some
of?
I took some music classes in college because I was in, I was only playing bass for maybe a year when I started going to college, and I was going for art. for like painting and drawing, and I was gonna before I thought I could be a musician, I wanted to make album covers and poster art, and I was always into music. You know, I was just a music freak. You know, had tons of cassette tapes and not too many records back then. I guess I might have had a few LPs when I was growing up really young, but it was more cassettes and CDs. And then, but yeah, I took a few music classes but really was focusing on drawing and painting and wanted to be on the more graphic side of the music business, I think.
And do you still do that? Like, or did you do it in Steepwater or bands you've been in, the graphic design?
A little bit, you know, kind of half-assed, you know, like I did a lot of the poster work for Steepwater, and I would help with album art, but I might come up with like an idea, and when it came down to the final like design of the album or CD artwork, I handed it off to somebody who knew what they were doing. I felt I was always a little bit too worried about like not getting the template right or having something being slightly off center, and I'd rather have someone else screw it up than me.
Get thousands of albums printed and everything's like misaligned or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
you came to it late though. Like if you're saying, what age do people go to college in America? 18, 19? Is it around?
Yeah. You graduate from high school at 18. So that's right. That's right. When I started playing bass was 18. It was kind of late. Yeah.
Yeah, same as me. I was 17, 18. So did you have like, you were just strumming a few chords before that? Was there any kind of music?
I barely was even, I probably not even that. I think when I was 16, my parents bought me a guitar because I was bugging them about it. You know, wanted to learn how to play guitar. And they bought me this really like cheap guitar, and it had a speaker built into the body of the guitar, a little amplifier, you know. And I think you could still plug it into an amp if you wanted to. And this, you know, I think it might have even been more like a toy. Like it was, they might have bought it at Toys R Us or JCPenney or something. It wasn't like a proper music store guitar, and it couldn't stay in tune. The last thing I can remember doing with it is sitting on my porch at my house, my parents' house, and on this back porch. It was a nice summer day, and I was out there, and I was like, I'm going to practice. So I had taken a few lessons at that point and learned a few chords, but the damn thing wouldn't stay in tune, and I didn't have an ear to tune it, and I didn't have a tuner.
Yeah.
So I probably spent like an hour just trying to get it in tune and couldn't do it, and just threw it down on the ground and said, all right, I'm done. Probably the last time I picked it up, you know.
Really? Okay. So you really had no guitar experience till your mates said,
barely any. I bet I took like maybe 3 or 4 lessons on guitar, you know, and then I kind of gave it up.
Do you remember what bass you got as your first bass when they told you go get a bass? Like,
it was like a short scale learner bass from a friend of mine who also played bass in high school. I think it was his first bass. I can't remember the brand. It was a really cheap thing, but it was good enough to like learn a few songs on and get my fingers under it. And in bass, I seemed to pick up pretty quickly. I don't know if it was just the, you know, concentrate on one string at a time type of thing, or the strings being bigger and easier for my hands. Or maybe I was just older and maybe it just came, everything aligned a little bit easier for me. I don't know. And then the first proper bass I bought was an Ibanez EX series, I think.
I don't know. I don't know what. I'll pop a picture of it up on the screen. I don't think I know that at all.
Actually, I looked when, you know, like when you asked me about doing this, I'm like, I should probably know what bass I bought. You know, like I knew it was an Ibanez. I couldn't remember which kind it was. So I did some research. I'm like Googling, you know, pointy headstock Ibanez guitars, Ibanez basses. It was, I stumbled across a couple ones that looked very familiar. It had like I'm pretty sure it had a P bass and a jazz bass configuration, you know, pickup configuration. It was red, kind of sparkly. It was all right. It was, you know, it was a good proper bass for me at that point. And I bet I think I got that right after I graduated high school, or maybe a few months after I graduated high school.
It's not really an ideal time to start your music career because, you know, when you're in high school, you've loads of time, you've no responsibilities. You can literally practice for 8-9 hours a day, and no one's going to say anything to you. Did you have time like to put in the hours in the shed, like because there's distractions in college. There's whatever, women, drink,
Sure, yeah.
everything. Like
My shedding, my practicing was, I mean, I practiced the songs I needed to learn to play with the guys I played with, but it wasn't like I I didn't really ever take any proper bass lessons. I might have taken a couple just to kind of get it under my, get a little bit of a knowledge about the instrument a little bit. And then when I had when I met Joe, he was in a band, and this bass player, this guy Phil Reiner, he lives in Northwest Indiana, and he's an amazing bass player. And I would just go and watch their rehearsals, and I would watch Phil's hands, and he had such a control over the instrument, and his fingers barely looked like they moved. Like they would they moved up and down the neck, but they weren't like this. He wasn't really like this. He was more like his fingers really stayed together, and they just kind of like stayed in these little blocks, and his fingers never went too far off the neck or off the fretboard. And I was just like, I got to figure out how to do that, and I took a few lessons from him, and then it was basically just kind of, just sitting down and figuring it out on my own and learning songs. And this is the day, way before the internet and before you could find tabs everywhere. And so you had to sit down and kind of learn everything by ear, Yeah,
I remember that before the internet, I was getting into Jacko. Like I was listening to him, but I was thinking, that's impossible. How can you play that stuff? But there was actually a guy in my local town, a little bit older than me, who could play all the Jacko bass lines.
Oh wow!
He was one of these bedroom musicians. I don't think he even gigs anymore. But I got to go see him live a few times, and I was just like, it was crazy because I'd never even seen a video of Jacko playing, and there was this guy in my hometown just shredding all the Jacko lines. No problem.
Oh, that's cool. Did you take lessons from him?
No, I don't. Yeah. I don't think I've ever even spoken to him. I just
okay, you just went and saw him.
Yeah. He's not a music. He doesn't play music for a living, right? And he was just amazing at playing loads of Jacko lines. He's probably like a solicitor or something.
Yeah. Practice like 20 hours a day. Slept a little bit. Woke up, practiced.
Yeah, sure. When you're living in the small town, there's not too many distractions, and you can play. I used to practice on my parents' farm. Like we had a. The practice room was like on one of the farm buildings, so we could just play till any time we wanted. Sometimes my mother would be like, "What the hell was going on last night?" Could hear people screaming their heads off at like 6 a.m. They're like, we were just enjoying it, We were in a punk band at the time, so we were just really getting into like all the punk tunes, but quickly evolved from that, like to get into more like jazz and blues and all that kind of stuff. So how did you end up? So when you met the drummer from Steepwater, he had a different bass player. So what happened that and they weren't obviously called Steepwater then? You formed.
No, this was a different band. This was a band called Mad World, and it was more of a this was like 1990, and so it was right on that cusp of kind of like slightly. This band was like Van Halen meets Aerosmith. But I mean, I'm not gonna say we were as good as those bands, but it was aspiring to be like that.
Yeah.
But it was a good band, and I just kind of hung out with that band a lot. And this is a different band that Phil Reiner played in, but I would just go to their rehearsals too and just kind of hang out. And I got to know the guys in the band really well, and they weren't really happy with their bass player. And I don't think really, as far as I think musically, they were kind of going in different directions, and it was some personality stuff. And I really, like I said, I got along with them well. Joe and I were like best friends, and eventually they just kind of, squeezed me into this band. And I sat with the guitar player I would go over to his house and practice for hours, just me and him. He would show me the songs and kind of give me an idea of what bass lines to play. And that was really, it was shedding, like it was learning a lot of stuff, but it wasn't like he was like saying, he never really told me what I was doing. He was just kind of like, it was more sight and ear than it was anything. Like I wasn't learning that this is the 1 and this is the 5 and 4 or 3 or whatever. And it was more just like, here's the song, and play along. And I just tried my best.
And that was your study pretty much, just following these guitars, like.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was cool, I was really young, and I was just hungry and wanted to to absorb as much about music as I could. But it was also about, the party and trying to, meet chicks and, when you're 19 or 20 years old, you're thinking, I'm going to be a rock star in a couple of years. Yeah. This is great,
It's amazing how good you get at that age as well. Like you're like a sponge, because I would say I can't play anything now that's more technical than what I could play when I was 18. It's just like those early years, you soak it all up, don't you? And you get good so quickly.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, I could play more licks now than I could then, but you're right. Like the amount, how quickly I learned everything was just so fast, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. This is amazing. Next thing you know, I'm playing gigs.
It's really good for kind of developing your own voice on the instrument as well, isn't it? When you're gigging a lot, but you're learning. You're still at the learning stage, like.
Yeah. It teaches you to like when you're playing with other people and playing in a band, it teaches you to listen, like it's not just even about everything you can do. It's about listening to the other guys and playing along with them and, getting along musically. And I think that's a big lesson to learn, is you can, if you sat in your bedroom and played all day, but never played in a band with other people, then you're kind of, you're not going to learn that valuable thing about learning to play with other musicians and how to not step on everyone's toes. And especially a bass player, I think it's really easy to get distracted and step on vocals or guitars or, I'm still learning that.
Yeah,
some restraint.
My friend is actually a language teacher, and he teaches English, but he lives in Spain. But
okay.
He was actually I was asking him about learning Spanish. He said the worst mistake everyone makes is that they're in the books all the time and using the apps, but you have to just jump in and start speaking it straight away. So it's kind of like that with music. It's very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all a language, isn't it? I mean, in a way.
And are there any bass players that you really like? Like I love I think the blues kind of bass playing doesn't really get enough respect. It's kind of like people learn the basic blues lines and then they're like, oh, I'm done with that now. But if you listen to like Donald Duck Dunn and Tommy Shannon and those kind of guys, they're doing such cool stuff with the blues bass lines. You could still learn a lot. People learn loads from the blues, but they kind of just leave it after they learn like the basic few walking blues lines.
Yeah, if you listen to Duck Dunn especially, like I went through a spell of really diving into his stuff, and I got a book that's really detailed with a lot of his bass lines, and man, it's like just there's so much more going on than sometimes than you realize, and like unless you really listen, sometimes if you're just casually listening to a Booker T or Otis tune, it's really easy just to kind of think that he's playing something simple, which a lot of times he is keeping it really simple, but there's these little things he'll throw in, these little triplets or some movement that isn't really difficult, but it's really cool in creative,
And he's smoking a pipe at the same time. So.
Yeah, right.
That's some skill to have.
Yeah, right. Speaking of Duck Dunn, have you ever seen that? It's Neil Young. I think it's from like the 90s. Live from Red Rocks.
No, never.
Duck Dunn's the bass player on that, and Jim Keltner's on drums. It's really cool. You should check it out. I don't know if you're a Neil Young fan or not.
I am, but I didn't know he played with Neil Young. I've only ever seen him playing in the Blues Brothers with Booker T. Like, so I didn't know he did a lot of work with people like Neil Young. Like,
yeah. I don't know if I don't know how many artists he's done, session work outside of the blues scene or the R&B scene, but yeah, that's a really. I think he did like a whole tour with Neil Young. So yeah, you could check it out. Like if you just put Neil Young, Red Rocks, 90s, I don't know if it was like maybe, I don't know, 92, 93, 94, something like that. Yeah.
Cool. Because I had Paul Bushnell. He was actually the first ever guest I had on the podcast. Irish bass player. And he played a bunch of Neil Young albums. And he played in Red Rocks as well.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Have you done Red Rocks? Because I was saying it's probably one of the places I would absolutely love to play. It just looks amazing. Like,
yeah, I've never played there. I've never even seen a show. I'd love to just go see a show there, I think, too.
Yeah. It just looks crazy. He was saying there's a big tunnel to the stage and everyone writes their name with like a marker on it or something. But Yeah, I'd say for even like bands that have toured the whole world, it's probably like one of those bucket list venues. You kind of can't believe it when you're there. Like,
yeah, Davies played there.
Yeah,
he played. Davey played there in the, maybe pretty early on in his career here. I think, like maybe like 2008, 2009.
Yeah, that's you're now in the Davy Knowles band. He's from the Isle of Man, is he?
Yeah.
Like
he's actually there right now.
Like the Bee Gees, they're the only other famous people I can think of that are
Bee
from
Gees and Davy Knowles.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal player. I've never seen him doing his own stuff, but I've seen him a bunch of times doing the Rory Gallagher thing because he's the new kind of for North America. He does the singing.
Yeah. He does all the stuff with Jerry here. Yeah.
And he's class. He's an amazing guitarist. But I was listening to the new album today, the one that you're playing on. It's really cool.
Thanks.
How was that experience after like 20 years with the Steepwater and then going into studio with someone else? Was it just like putting on an old pair of socks, or was it?
No, it was different. It was different because with Steepwater, with the exception of the times where we had like worked with a big producer, we were all very heavy-handed on producing. Like most of the records were self-produced with Steepwater, and I always kind of like was very like in throwing out ideas and very like I don't know what word I'm trying to look for, but I was just very involved with the production and all that stuff. And with this, I just kind of had to sit back because Davey hired a producer, and not that I'm just a hired gun. I'm in Davey's band, but I just wanted to just kind of like lay low, play, and kind of like let everything kind of happen. And it was different. It was difficult because there were definitely times where I kind of wanted to voice some opinion, but I kind of held back just because I wanted to be easygoing and just let the producer and Davey kind of do their thing.
Yeah, it's a different gig, like, and that's something you have to learn, I suppose. like when you should voice your opinion or when you should just maybe not, like. Because I was reading a bit. I think I saw an interview with him. I read it. He was saying he doesn't consider himself like just a guitarist. He says he's a songwriter now. Like he wanted to get away from being the guitar guy. Is that kind of where he's going now? It's all about the songs, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I think that he's, at least for the past couple of years, I think that he's wanted to really focus on songs but at the same time, I feel like he loves playing guitar and being instrumentals at the same time. He is. There's times where we're playing on stage, I'm like, what the hell are you doing, man? That's crazy. But yeah, you'd have to ask him, his opinion on that for sure. But for this record, we definitely were trying to focus more on songs and not have it be such a guitar focused album. But I think that might change on the next one. I think he might want to start maybe like go 50% more guitar on the next one than was on this. I mean, the new record's really cool. And when it was done though, I was kind of surprised, like, because we cut all the basic tracks in Los Angeles, and then I came home, and the drummer and the keyboard player Andrew and Jeremy came back, and Davey stayed out there to do vocals and more guitar stuff. And I thought there'd be a little bit more guitar on the final product than it's actually there. But that being said, I think it's a great record. I think the songs are really good. The production's great. I was really happy with my bass tone and yeah, it was cool.
And do you think bands will keep going to studios? Like, you could do your bass parts at home, like if you had a good preamp and setup. Do you think people are still going to keep going to studios for the atmosphere of being in a real studio and for the creative output you get from going there? Like,
I mean, I think that there's reason for both, right? I mean, I think that if I'm going to be making a proper, like going and making a record, I like that studio aspect. It kind of takes you into a place where you're working, you're trying to be creative. Not that you can't be creative at home, or because I've done the home recordings as well, and send some files off to some friends for bass for their records. But it's a totally different thing. It's like to have to be everyone in the room together, you know, even if you're playing to a click or you're not playing to a click, if you're all in the room together, there's something about that chemistry and how you can play off each other, you know, like, and if you're doing it totally remotely, you have to do it to a click. And it's, I think just something you're going to miss a little bit of something, you know, from not being in the same room.
Because Ozzy Osbourne's new album is out, and he actually asked Jimmy Page to be on it, and Jimmy Page just said, "I grew up playing in bands where we're all playing the same room. I don't send files to people," which I thought was pretty cool, you know, like, because everyone else who wanted to be on the album, you know, it's cool. Obviously, I'd love to be on an album with Ozzy Osbourne. Who wouldn't? But that he could just say, I don't send files on the internet. I just play in the band.
So is he not on the album then?
He didn't do it.
He didn't do it. Because is Ozzy's album totally done remotely? Is that the whole?
I think so. Yeah, it's just loads of guest guitarists. I think. I think he probably did like the main bits in a studio with his producer.
Okay, and then everyone else is flying their stuff in,
sending it in. Yeah. I know, and I suppose you have to do it for something like Ozzy. It makes sense, you know. He's having a big collaboration, but I'd be the same as you. If I'm doing a record with my band, I want to do it in the studio live if we can. I love doing the tracks live get the drums at least live, and then maybe fix things up with the bass and guitar, like.
Sure, yeah. But try to get the drums and bass at the same time, and then if you got to go back and fix a few things, do it right. Yeah. That's like.
You can leave a mistake sometimes, you know.
Oh yeah, I've left mistakes.
Yeah, me too.
There's actually been times where it's not necessarily like a raging mistake, like a totally bad note, but it's something I didn't mean to do, and I was like, I should probably go back and fix that. You know, I meant to do this and did this, and then I listened to it. I'm like, that's a great part. Like what I did was amazing. Like I've had to learn my mistakes. You know,
I actually had the same experience recently. I was brushing up on some old songs, and I did this thing in one of the songs. It's like, what? I never did that before. And I was having trouble trying to emulate the kind of weird rhythm or something I did. Like, But I remember the song, we did about 15 takes of it, so we were really kind of cooking. And at the end, the singer just says, "For fuck's sake, I'm glad that's done now." we left that on the record as well. It's really low in the mix, but it's there.
That's funny. What kind of band was that?
Same band. I've been in this band for 12 years, like, so.
Okay. And that's the Crow Black Chicken?
Yeah.
Cool.
So we did that one in a cow shed. Just the producer came down and brought all his equipment, and we just had this shit. Actually, it was my old music teacher who now lives in Chicago. It was his house in Ireland.
Oh, wow.
When he moved back, I just watched it for him while it was being sold for like 2 years. Like, it's in like the most scenic part of Ireland. It's just at the end of a driveway down in a load of mountains, and all you see is just sheep and mountains and fields.
Wow, that's cool.
But there's no phones, which was really good for, you know, the being in the studio. There's no internet signal or even phone signal, which is great for getting the work done. But I spent some time there, and I just got so bored. I was so isolated. It was like, it takes like 25 minutes to get to the nearest shop. So.
Wow.
You think you'd love that kind of isolation, but I wasn't really loving it. After a few days, it's like,
that would be kind of cool. I mean, and that's one other thing about going to a studio too, is that I kind of prefer going to out of town studios as well, as opposed to doing, like, I've worked in Chicago with Steepwater but when you go abroad or not really abroad, but when you go out of town where you're at a remote studio, it's all you're there to do, you know, like you're going to go in there every day and you're going to record to 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, and it's all you're focused on.
Yeah.
Or if you come home every night, you're going home, and I don't know if it's that much more distracted, but I've always loved that kind of like remote studio. You go there and you're just in it, you know.
No, I definitely totally agree. Like, all of our albums we did like that, where we went somewhere for a week and just got it done. I can't imagine doing it like coming home every night. It would just be so weird. Like, you wouldn't really be in the zone. You'd be kind of getting distracted by everything. Like,
yeah. You can't get in that creative zone.
No, the days are grueling anyway. When you're trying to get a full record done in a week, you're doing like 12, 13 hour days at least. Like. But,
and one other thing about recording at home, you can't really get that, like, at least for here, like, or at least when from home here in an apartment, I can't crank up my my Ampeg and get like a the tone I'd love to get. I can emulate it with some some plugins or some pedals, but I'm not going to get that exact sound that I would love to have for my live rig or from a good studio amp.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to mix in a bit of the microphone sound when you're doing it. Live, I wouldn't care if my amp is mic'd up or not. DI is fine, but on an album, it's nice to get a bit of the microphone
definitely.
sound in. Like,
yeah, there was one record Steepwater made, "Shake Your Faith," where there's not even a DI on it. It's all just microphone.
Really, that's unusual. Yeah. Usually, it's mainly DI.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised. The producers like, "Look, you got a great rig. Let's just put a mic on it and go." So I'm like, all right.
That's cool. Did you work with a lot of different producers? Because most bands kind of just they find someone they like and they stay with them for their career. Like, did you change producer a lot? Like,
we did, and I don't think it was really necessarily by choice of it just kind of happened circumstantially. Like, we worked with the first producers we ever really worked with were these Sean Slade and Paul Coldray, and they worked out of a studio in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and like near Boston. And what was the name of that studio? Fort Apache or something? That might be wrong.
I'll look it up.
We made the record Dharmakaya there, and they had worked with Hole, the Courtney Love's band, and they worked with Radiohead too, which was they did the Creep record.
Okay, Pablo Honey, the first one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they told us a cool story that they had to do like 20 something drum edits on that Creep tune because they only played it one time, or maybe they might have only got through it once. So I guess Radiohead, they weren't really huge fans of the song.
No, it was a throwaway kind of number.
Yeah, they didn't really want it to be on the record, let alone a single. I don't think. And so, but I think the producers kind of knew it was a really catchy tune, and so they had to do all these drum edits, and they did all like when we recorded Dharmakaya, we did the same thing. Everything was recorded on tape. There was no computers involved at that point. I mean, I think Pro Tools was definitely around when we made that record, but they edited everything on tape. Did you guys have you ever seen like editing on tape?
No, I know how it works with the blade, and somebody has to do it.
Yeah, they showed us how to, because there was like a tune where I remember we came in like I felt pretty good, and Joe's like, man, there was just one, a couple times where my snare might have been a little bit late, and they're like, you want to see us fix it? So they got the tape out, put the tape up on the machine. Or at first they slow it down, and they find the hit that they want to fix, and then they put the tape up on the tape machine where there's these little edges you could see. I don't know if you've probably seen a tape machine.
I've seen the machines in the studio, like they're kind of just like ornaments at this stage.
Yeah. But there's like a little right where the tape kind of fits in to where the heads are, you can lift it up, and there's a little like I wouldn't say it's a shelf, but it's a little platform where there's like little grooves on there where they can cut, right?
Yeah.
Like where the blade fits in. And they put the tape up there and cut out about, like that much of it, or maybe even less of the tape.
When they're doing like a fade, don't they do like a different cut at a
different angle? Yeah, you might be right. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's such a skill, like a lost skill. But like to be able to do that, you'd have to have done thousands of records.
I'm sure. Yeah, because what if you mess it up? Do you put the tape back in?
Yeah.
How do you fix your mistake? But how do you fix the mistake of the mistake?
Yeah, but today today can be a bit of a pain as well because we've unlimited tracks and unlimited chances to revise stuff, and you just don't know when to say it's done. Really, do you? Like sometimes.
Yeah. And that's another good thing about going to a proper studio too. I kind of feel like that gives you a smaller window of opportunity, right? Because if you're doing something at home, you can do so many takes of a tune or bass takes or guitar takes or whatever till you're happy with it, and like fine tune everything perfectly. Where if you're playing live as much as you possibly can, and you kind of have to like put it to bed. You have to be kind of comfortable with putting it to bed and letting the song roll or the recording roll as it is, you know. I think that's something I really admire a lot, like Neil Young for me. Like that's one thing I really like love about him. You read multiple articles about how, you know, he only did songs 1 or 2 or 3 times in the studio at the most. You know, he was like, I'm moving on. Like we got it. You know,
he did
Stones
a cool
too.
He did a cool album called The Noise about 10 years ago, and that was crazy sounding album. It was just him with a guitar with an amp with loads of reverb and feedback, and just singing on his own. I really liked that record. It was unusual, like.
Yeah, didn't Daniel Lanois produce that? I think.
Yeah, that's where the name came from. It was like Le Noise. That's where he. Yeah. That's it. I love that. Like when you're playing the bass, you usually kind of get only one day, don't you, in the studio? Well, that's how it usually works for me. It's like today is bass day. Do your bass, and then you can listen to guitar parts for the rest of the week and just hang around the studio. Is that the way it worked for you as well?
For the most part, yeah. With it depends on the circumstance of the studio, but it kind of you know, you do all your basic tracks you can, and if you have a fix it day, you kind of have the bass player kind of gets one day or a couple hours to fix everything.
And do you sing as well?
No, I don't really sing much. No, I wish I could.
Yeah, same here. Like people always say it'd be great if you sang a bit. I was like, well, it wouldn't be great for the audience.
There's not enough auto tune in the world to fix my
no,
fix
same
my
here.
voice.
And when you were in the studio, would you use a lot of basses? Generally, I don't really do that. I just use whatever I have live. I don't be like trying all the different basses in the studio to get like a great sound run. I just kind of use whatever I'm familiar with.
It kind of like I've used. It depends on the circumstance. You know, like if there was a couple studio sessions where I used a bunch. A record called Clava that Steepwater made. I think I used like at least 4 or 5 different basses on, and then Shake Your Faith I probably used about 4 or 5. Because I was able to travel with them and bring them all, so I kind of wanted to get different tones on different songs. I was doing a lot of Hofner stuff in the studio too, like excuse me. I was using Hofner a lot to record with, but it's you don't want to put Hofner on every song.
No, it's very. You have one there. I got a lend of one off my friend. Where is it? There behind my head. Yep. It's a fake one, like Harley Benton, but they have a very unique sound. It pops out of the mix brilliantly, but you don't want it on every song, I'd say.
No, yeah. I was going through a big McCartney phase at that point too, and I feel like there were some Steepwater songs that just really called for that kind of vibe and tone and went for it. Yeah, I've used but for like the last Davey record, I only brought my my Ripper, my P bass, and I think I used a Jack Cassidy, which I have a Jack Cassidy here, but I didn't bring it with me. But they had one at the studio, and I used that on one song or 2, I can't remember, but
yeah, I had one before. I had one for a tour before, a Jack Cassidy. It's cool. I like it. I prefer where is it? The Alan Woody, the one. See the.
I see it. Yep.
That's the nicest short scale kind of bass in that style I've ever played. I think it's really cool. Like,
and those kind of have a Hofnerish kind of vibe too, don't they? I like.
Yeah.
They might have more. I've played them. I've never owned one, but I just from playing them, I know that it was kind of modeled after like a club Hofner, right?
Yeah,
but it has a little bit more. He
designed the whole thing like for his own specs, you know, exactly what he thought it should be like.
Yeah, but the tonal options are maybe a little. There might be more options than a Hofner would have, but you can kind of get that kind of vibe out of that bass, I think, if you wanted.
I found it's really good for like doing like synth bass sounds and crazy effects.
Okay.
I thought like I was the only one who knew about this, but I saw Ian Allison was saying that the hollow basses give a more like true signal without a lot of overtones and stuff, and the effects, it works better with the effects because it's just getting that one signal and whatever the science behind is it. But other people are onto it as well. So that kind of Hofner sound is really good if you're putting loads of effects pedals into it.
Okay, I'll have to try that. Yeah, that dude's out of his mind. Ian from Scott's Bass Lessons.
Yeah, he's class. I love him on Instagram. He's really I learned a lot from him actually in the last few years, just in terms of pedals and how they work and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's really into the synth stuff and I was watching a video of his about compression, and he uses, what are those called, the Cali 76 or something like that, or what's the name of what's the brand? I can't remember.
Noble. Is it Noble? That's the preamp.
Noble's the DI, the preamp. Yeah, he uses the compression. I can't remember, but man, they sound so good. Yeah, like I've used quite a bit of I've used different compressors through my life, but I've always had one on my board almost always.
Yeah, I don't have one at all. I must get one. I understand how compression works, but it's kind of hard to get your head around, isn't it? Sometimes, like
it sometimes it can be used. Sometimes I like it live, and but usually I like it more open sounding and to have more control over the dynamics myself. But in the studio, I like to squash the shit out of it. Like,
really?
yeah. Like, I mean, and not so much that it takes away like your tone, but kind of how Ian talks about in one of his videos. If you play with the compression and you have the compression on while you're recording, which I kind of feel that's important instead of just slapping it on afterwards, actually having it on while you're and having that sound in your headphones, it makes you play a little bit different. If you play kind of quiet, like soft, the bass really can be big sounding. Can make every note really kind of sing and bring out nuances in the notes, which is cool, you know.
And do you use other effects at all, or is it just kind of compression and stuff like that?
I use I'm looking down at my board. I have some fuzz that I use sparingly and an envelope filter. And then I have some other stuff that's more like I have EQ pedals that I have on all the time for different basses. And I have one of those Sonic Stomps from BBE that I use all the time. That's kind of a nice a pedal that I stumbled across. Saw a guy playing in a small blues bar in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I'm like, man, your tone is amazing. It's like, it's this little pedal right here.
What's it called?
Sonic Stomp from BBE. Okay. And it's what it says it does is it just has two knobs. It has it says low contour or process. And it's basically like high and lows. And what it's supposed to do, it says like that the low frequencies even travel slower than your high frequencies do through your cables. And what this thing is supposed to equal them out and kind of to where they hit your amp at the same time.
Never heard this.
And I'm sure it's like milliseconds, right? It's it's not like it's, you know, the delay is that huge. But it's just it just puts a little bit of special sauce on top of the tone. I don't know.
Cool. I might check. Are they expensive, those pedals?
No, they're actually pretty cheap. I think you can get them for under $100 or right around 100. Yeah.
I'm supposed to be stopping buying pedals but I might get that one because it's just a never-ending thing, isn't it? You just have all these fuzzes and stuff.
I've gone through quite a bit of fuzzes, and the one I've been digging lately is this. It's called the Ass Master. It from I think it's Malaco, and I it's like a copy of a Maestro fuzz. So it kind of has like that 60s, real, you know, late 60s kind of nasty. I think I read that Larry Graham used the old Maestro fuzzes, so that's why I kind of got the idea.
Yeah, he used it in his DVD. Well, if that's another one where he's all white suit, all white bass with a gold hardware. That's his classic DVD. That's what he's probably using.
I think I either I had that DVD at one point or I borrowed it from a friend, and I was like, it was amazing to watch, but I'm like, how do you learn anything? He was just like
he's just playing. Like
he wasn't really explaining how he did anything. He just did it, right? Like it wasn't hilarious. Slowing things down for you or anything. It was just like a clinic of him just going, you know, showing you how it's done, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's
But
such a funny DVD. It's there's great comedy value to it as well. Like
uh,
he's brilliant in it.
yeah, he is. Have you ever seen the Rick Danko one? Where he's
No,
like,
I didn't know he even did one.
he did one, and he's like sitting in the basement of his house. He's got this like Hawaiian shirt on. It's kind of like later on in his life, you know, and it's funny too. Like he kind of cracks himself up, and he's kind of silly and goofy, and it's a treat. You should check it out. I think there's a couple clips on YouTube.
Nice. I think that was like in the 80s. That must have been a big market for them because they were kind of getting everyone to do bass DVDs. And some of the guys they were asking would never have taught bass, or even they wouldn't really be even thinking about how they play the bass. And then they get asked to do a DVD. They're like, okay, so this is what I do.
Yeah. That's kind of, if I had to do a DVD, it would be the same thing. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it.
So you don't teach at all? You never got into a bit of teaching?
I got into teaching recently, just with pandemic. I had to kind of force my hand into doing something. So I did a few online lessons. Like right when the lockdown started happening, I was all like, all right, I got to figure out some way to make some, keep the money going and stay focused. And I wanted to stay because with the Davy Band, we were like really on a roll. And we were touring a lot up until the pandemic. And we were actually set to we were on the way to record that record in March. We were the studio sessions was supposed to start, I think, like the 20th or something of March.
Oh God, yeah.
In LA, and we were en route on the way out there. So like the band was really hot, and we were firing on all cylinders. And then we just got like everyone, the rug got pulled out from underneath you, and then you're just sitting at home for days. And I wanted to stay busy. I wanted to be, wanted to stay musically busy somehow. And so I kind of started doing some online teaching. And then I got a student here in Chicago that a friend of mine he was a big Steepwater fan for years. But he always wanted to play bass and never touched it. So he was a total beginner. So like someone like that doesn't know anything, I feel like I can kind of teach that. And I'm kind of joking when I say I don't know what I'm doing at all, but it's not like I'm totally schooled in like this jazz world and know every little thing I'm doing. And it's kind of funny because even when I've ever sat down like, okay, I'm gonna learn the modes today. I'm gonna sit down and actually I'm gonna get these under my I want to have these in my back pocket. I want to know, and I'm like, I already know what I'm doing. I already do this. I already use this mode like crazy, but I didn't know that I was, I just, and I kind of feel like it hurt me because I would realize that, and I would kind of like just, okay, I don't need to learn them because I already know them. Yeah, I wouldn't properly learn them, and so I feel like in the last couple of years, being forced to teach and being in the pandemic and kind of having a lot more time on your hands, I've forced myself to kind of get those under my wing a little bit more and kind of get a better grasp of those things, or at least I'm like, at least I'll pick this mode and this one. Maybe that I don't know them all, but at least I know the essential ones,
Yeah, it's great for your own bass playing to teaching. You probably find that your own playing is improving loads just because you're analyzing, especially your technique. You really start thinking about technique because you start seeing people's fingers flying and you're like, oh, how do you stop that? And you have to figure out exercises.
Yeah, exactly. Like the same thing with like when I was seeing my friend Phil play back in the day, I always saw his hand, how close he kept everything to the neck, and I would see photos of myself playing, and I would have my pinky would be flying off here, or this hand would look goofy, and like, all right, I got to work on like keeping my keeping everything home a little bit more, and trying to really be more efficient, because that's the thing. It's not. It's about being efficient, if your efficiency is better with your hands and your technique, you're going to be able to play smoother and better and more in the pocket, and your chops will be faster too, right? Like,
yeah, I'm still not back to it. I got a massive blister on the last tour because I'm used to playing at home in the shed, but then when you're playing live,
it's a totally different thing, man.
I had a crazy blister, like and then I switched to using a different finger, and I got a blister on that. I was like, I'm glad this tour is over tomorrow, because I don't know if I was trying to play all the songs with a plectrum. Then I play a bit of plectrum, But to try and play the 2 hour set when 90% of the songs are done with fingers, it's very hard to change to using plectrum.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I could, when I'm sitting at home playing my Hofner, Hofner, you almost have to play up with a pick. You know, it kind of feels wrong to play with your fingers. Or if I'm in the studio, I could sit down and be real, like, you know, soft and play with a pick. I could do it. But if I had to, I've tried to do it live and I'm all over the place. I'm so sloppy. I need my fingers. But I've done the same thing before. Like, I remember, I think I had these terrible blisters on both fingers coming back from my honeymoon. Like, Steepwater hadn't taken much time off at all, but we, you know, took maybe like a week off for my wedding and then another week off for my honeymoon. Came back and then we had like a slew of gigs, and like the very first one, man, I just plowed into my bass like old, like thinking it was old, like I hadn't, you know, missed a day. And I had these 2 huge blood blisters on my fingers. It was awful.
Yeah, I think it goes for anyone listening. It was Stu Ham kind of was saying, let the amp do the work. You have to crank your amp and play really lightly. I kind of forgot about that because I was playing at home at the pandemic, and I was like, shit, why am I digging in so much? I should just turn up the amp, like.
Yeah. And it's sometimes it's hard because, like, if you're playing live and you have your amp set and you're having a hard time, you're digging in because you want to, like, you need more volume out of your amp, and to hear yourself, you're digging in a little bit more. At the same time, I've always kind of felt like, I mean, sometimes I'm not worried about it. I'll go back and turn my amp up. But some gigs, it's like, do I want to turn my amp up? Am I going to piss off the sound guy?
Yeah.
Am I going to blow the vibe on the stage? What if I turn up too much? You can go around chasing your tail, so it's kind of difficult. But if you can kind of do that trick at Soundchecker before the gig starts, crank the amp up and play lightly, then you'll have more headroom, right? Like, you won't have to dig in as much. And
yeah, you're an Ampeg guy. I find it real. I just play like a 2x10 amp all the time. But obviously at festivals, you always get the fridge, like the 8x10.
Yeah.
And I find it really hard to control though. It's so powerful, the volume, like.
The 810s could definitely be a little bit much. My personal rig, I have a 610, which for some reason it's only 2 less speakers, but seems like it's way easier to kind of control. And also I 90% of the time I use a V4, which is only 100 watts and not 300 watts like the SVT. SVTs sound amazing, especially the vintage reissues or the old ones. You know, to me, they just have this special character about them. But I mean, for 90% of the venues we play, it's way too loud. Or it's going to be too loud by the time I get it to where I want it to sound good. You know, like before it's doing what I like, it's going to be too loud. But the V4, I can kind of control it a little bit more and have a little bit, like, the stage volume won't be quite as loud, and I'm not pissing off everybody. I saw a funny post from someone on the internet the other day, and they were saying that during sound check, what they've been doing is they start really low. So then the sound guy or someone in the band goes, "Hey man, I can barely hear you. You got to turn up." And then you kind of get the green light to turn up. So,
oh, nice. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm stealing that idea from here on out. I'm going to start low, and then, "Hey man, I can't really hear you too well. You should turn up." I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Crank it. I don't find bass players generally are culprits for the loud. It's always the guitarist.
Yeah.
For their solos and stuff, they're like, they like to just crank it.
Yeah. I've been accused of being a loud bass player, but not necessarily a bad thing always, but sometimes I've gotten some snarls on stage from people, but for the most part, it's about, like, you know, I want to play for the room, and I want to play for everything, but at the same time, I feel like, I mean, I'm an old school type of dude that likes old music. Who in those old bands, they turned up loud on stage.
Yeah,
you know, and they didn't have, like, I'm not gonna get in-ear monitors and start playing with no amp or playing with like some kind of like total sans amp type of situation. And I feel like a lot of like today's sound man, when you play like a festival or in a situation where it's like they hire these guys in, like, I think they're getting more and more used to like having total freaking control of every little thing, right? And they don't want much stage volume. They want to be able to control the PA and not have to fight anything. And that those usually you're gonna I'm gonna butt heads, but even any band I'm in usually kind of butts heads with that type of situation, because I'm with Steepwater or Davey. It's like we're playing a little bit loud, and I don't think we're the loudest thing in the world, but we're not playing quiet either,
Yeah, well, you're at those festivals, those sound engineers, their bread and butter is probably just doing, pop gigs and country music. And then these blues rock guys come in and they're like blowing their amps are like up to 10. So yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, they're just not used to it. But you have to have that volume to really get the sound. Because I don't use in-ears either. Like, but I have earplugs in, but then I need to be even louder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what was I gonna say? Like, but then like sometimes you find a sound engineer that's from kind of that old school vibe, who, like, man, you guys' tones were killing tonight. You're like, it was so easy to mix you guys because you guys gave us great tones and your stage volumes were good. And so I'd say it's about, it's about 50-50 that we run into a kind of like sound, I was gonna say sound Nazi, but that's probably not too
volume Nazi.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a big Steepwater fan, Graham Robertson. Do you know him? Scottish guy. And he was saying he wanted to know a bit about the recording of Grace and Melody, the album you did with Mark Ford from the Black Crowes. Do you have any kind of abiding memories of that particular album?
That was a cool record to make. We all really learned a lot about making records, because we had done the one record with Paul and Sean that did the Radiohead stuff, but they basically let us just kind of go in there and rip and play our tunes the way we rehearsed them. And they were just all about like getting the great take, making sure the tempo was up to speed and making sure we didn't mess up, right? We played steady. That was kind of more of their deal. Like, it's like, get the energy, get the tune. Where Mark, for the most of the songs, that when we brought the songs in there, he dissected them, and it was like a dissection on the spot. Like, we sent him demos, but he didn't send us ideas back or say, hey, I have this kind of vibe idea for this song or that. We didn't know him until we got there. And I believe we had like 2 weeks booked at the studio, and there was maybe a 3 or 4 day break in between, like maybe 5 or 6 day sessions. Maybe it was, I can't remember all the details. Maybe it was seven, like then 4 days off and then another 7 days. And it was really cool because, like I said, he really, because we had these arrangements of these songs, we rehearsed them. We were all ready to record them the way we had rehearsed them and arranged them. And then he just kind of like disintegrated all those ideas.
That's mad. Did you find that hard? Like, as a band, you probably never had a producer who was so, I suppose that's more of a producer in the more like traditional sense, like in the pop world, where they dissect the songs and they really take them. But a lot of rock bands are more used to having the producer being way more hands off. He's like the engineer, and he might add a few ideas. So was that weird for you guys experiencing that?
It was weird. It was an adjustment, but at the same time, we were all huge Black Crowes fans and huge fans of Mark. So we trusted him, like it was, I think if we hadn't trusted him, it would have been a totally different situation. And I learned so much about bass playing, about laying back, about kind of giving this like I remember he was talking this story. I can't remember what song we were playing, but we were playing this tune, and it was very early on in the session. And he was kind of like saying like, because I don't think we recorded any songs with a click. If we did, it was like maybe 1 or 2. And he was like saying like the guitar should almost kind of be with the snares in the front of the beat, and the bass and the kick drum should be back here. He was like kind of like describing how to get like a good swing between us. He's like, you guys are almost too tight.
Yeah.
I want you guys to stop playing so much together and kind of separate yourselves a little bit, so there's more air in the music. And that was a big eye opener, that was a hard thing to do too. Like I just remember like just trying to lay back as far as I could on that beat, without falling back too far or pulling or slowing things down. You know, I didn't want to slow things down either. So, but it was interesting. It was really cool to work with him and kind of like rip those songs down and then build them back up again. And I love the record. It's great.
It's a really cool record. There's one song where it's very jammy. It's a really long song, and there's a dueling guitar thing going on. And I thought that was class. That was usually if I was there, I'd be like, no, we can't have a guitar solo for like 4 or 5 minutes. But it really works in that song, the way he put it together. Like,
yeah. Well, that was. I think that was recorded kind of like mid to later on in the sessions, and we had recorded a couple tunes, and we started this tune called "All the Way to Nowhere," and we were doing it, and we were recording the tune, and Mark had some kind of idea for a guitar part, and he was showing Jeff, and I'm like, dude, why don't you just play guitar with us? You know, like you got this idea for, and that kind of opened the floodgates, and then from then on, he was almost playing guitar, like a rhythm guitar, on every track. And then when we got to Waiting to Be Offended, the long track that you're talking about, I think it's like at least 13 minutes, right? If not longer.
That's a nice length of a track.
Yeah. I think on the LP, it's almost the whole side of one side of the record. And there's actually quite a bit edited out of that take. Like there was,
you must really been feeling that one in the studio, just going on for like 15 minutes.
But that was a cool part to record that tune and have Jeff and Mark going back and forth playing guitar back and dueling leads and all that. It was a trip. And
you met him on tour, was it? As a support band, was that how you hooked up with Mark? Was it?
Yeah, we had met him. Steepwater opened up for Mark. I think I'm trying to remember the timeline. Oh, we opened up for him in Spain. In where was it? It was like near Bilbao. Not where they have. Where's Esquina? That's Victoria Gasteiz. It's right around that area. But it wasn't the Esquina festival. It was another like kind of outdoor deal, outdoor kind of festival kind of vibe. And we were playing 2 nights. We played one night. We played and we did all covers, and then the next night we did a Steepwater set, and then one night we actually went on after Mark, which was a head scratcher. Like, I don't think it wasn't like that we were really the headliner. It was just we were the late band. Like, because in Spain things go until like 4 or 5 in the morning.
They're crazy. Like they never go to sleep.
Yeah. So Mark had like the proper headlining spot of probably like 9 to 11, and we went on at like 11:30 to like 2 in the morning or something.
They call that deadlining in Ireland at the metal gigs, because it seems like you're the headline band, but you're deadlining. There's no one there. Everyone is too drunk to appreciate it.
But in Spain, they're still there.
Yeah, they're only getting started.
They're not ready to go home yet. So, so like we had Mark come up and sit in. Well, actually, we asked Elijah Ford was in Mark's band, and we asked Elijah if he wanted to sit in on a tune, and he was really young. He might have been 16 or 17 at the time. He hadn't really been out playing much, and he plays bass with Gary Clark Jr. now.
Oh, class.
Yeah,
I've actually seen him because I saw Gary Clark at Glastonbury a few years ago. So if he,
all right, I think he's only been in the band maybe in the past year.
Okay,
he joined Gary Clark's band, but he played guitar with Mark. He plays both guitar and bass. He's great at both. And he sat in with us on a tune, and then we had Mark sit in with us, and we really just we did Cortez the Killer by Neil Young, and then I think he started Alabama by Neil Young, and I didn't know it. So then I handed my bass off to Mark's bass player. So it kind of turned into like this big jam session. It was really cool.
That's kind of unusual though, isn't it? Like, because we've done a lot of support slots, but generally you wouldn't have much time to hang out with the people you're supporting. It's kind of like handshake, hi guys, then people go to their green rooms and that's it.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen too often where you get to jam with them and kind of become mates like.
Yeah. It was cool. I mean, it was still kind of like we didn't really talk to Mark. He was kind of, you know, this elusive character sitting in this green room, but we asked Elijah to jam, and I think that kind of opened the gate, and he was like, "Oh, that's cool. You're having, Elijah up." And then we asked him, and he was cool. And then like a week later, we played in Chicago, and we opened for Mark at the Double Door, this, historic venue that's not there anymore, in Chicago. And that was right around my birthday, and he had Jeff and I come up and sit in with his band that night. And then, man, like I think someone in his road crew came up to me later that night and said, we were listening to your guys' record in the van, he was really liking it. And he kind of mentioned something about being, interested in producing you guys. And I was like, really? That's cool. So then Mark was playing up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is maybe like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours from here, from north of Chicago. And, we decided to drive up there to go see him, and saw him play. I got to sit in with him in his band that night, which was pretty wild. I actually got on stage mid-song playing Cocaine by Eric Clapton. Nice, yeah. They were doing that, and Mark Dutton, the bass player, like kind of said, "Hey, come up here." I'm like, "Right now?" He's like, "Yeah." He motions to come up, and he hands me the bass. I'm like, what key are you in? And then, I think I'd played the song maybe like 4 or 5 times in another band I was in, and kind of remembered the groove a little bit and just went with it. And it was pretty cool to do that. But anyways, like later that night, we talked to Mark, and he even says like, "Hey, like I'm making records out in California at the studio." He's like, "If you ever find your way out there, I'd be interested in producing you guys." And we were like, "All right, we'll figure out a way to get out there," and we just made it happen.
And do you get, I always regret sometimes not getting pictures when I do these gigs with people, because I don't want to be annoying people asking for a picture. But then in hindsight, you're thinking, I wish I had it, because we supported ZZ Top once. And just before we went on stage, Dusty was to the side of the stage, just chilling out. And I was thinking, will I go get a picture? And I didn't. And now I'm like, fuck, I should have got that picture with Dusty.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah, I'm not a big picture guy with people. I've done it with a few here and there, but yeah, I wish there's pictures of me playing with Mark on stage, and there's a lot of photos of us making the record Grace and Melody, which I can send you some.
Cool.
But yeah, there's been a few times we've opened up for people like ZZ Top. We opened up for ZZ Top once, and like I said, that was one of the first bands I can remember really getting into, and that would have been cool. But we didn't meet any of those guys. They were kind of in their own little bubble.
Oh, we were so green. Like we had never done a gig really like that. And we were eating in the green room. Well, actually, we only got told we were doing the gig 4 or 5 hours before the gig. We just got a phone call saying, "Wow." Because we had bought tickets. We were all going to the gig as, punters. But we were backstage then eating dinner with ZZ Top, and we just left all our crap backstage, and someone taps on the shoulders like, "You clean up after yourself backstage, guys." We're like, "Oh shit, we're not being rock stars. We've never actually been backstage."
This is our first time.
Yeah, it's our first time supporting someone as big as ZZ Top. We just assumed like there was crew everywhere to clean up after you, but it was a class thing to do, like. But when you leave in the Steepwater, that must have been kind of a massive life-changing thing. Like it's like a marriage, isn't it? Like 20 years with the one band, like.
Yeah, it wasn't easy to do. It was the hardest decision I've ever made to leave that band. It was tough. But I think I made the right decision, and it was just kind of like time for a change. 20 years is a long time with anybody. And I mean, but there's been bands that have been together obviously a lot longer than that, but there's been bands that didn't last even, a fraction of that.
Exactly.
So, I love those guys. Sorry, I'm getting a little hoarse. I guess I haven't been talking this much.
Yeah. It's been a while since you've talked for like this. That's the COVID. We're not used to like having these big long chats with people.
I know. Just sitting at home playing my bass. But anyways, I love those dudes. We get along, and we actually we did a gig together. Davey and Steepwater played a show up in Minnesota a few months ago, and it was fun. We had Jeff and Eric sitting with the band, and yeah, it was cool. But yeah, I keep in touch with them. We text pretty often, almost every week. I mean, Joe and I go back even further than that. Like Steepwater formed in '98. We had met Jeff in '96, and I met Joe in like '90 or '91, something right around that time. So, yeah, I've known Joe almost.
Just my mother. She always rings me when I'm doing these podcasts. How does she know? Sorry.
Oh, that's all good.
Because I have the internet turned off, and everyone else would just use WhatsApp or something. But my mom actually rings.
But yeah. So what was I saying? Anyway, it was. I've known Joe for like 30 years, almost, or even I've probably known Joe 30 years. And him and I just have like this, like kind of like almost like kind of Keith and Mick kind of relationship, like where we get along, and then we also kind of, kind of butt heads. Yeah. And so it was I feel like we're like brothers, and kind of sometimes with brothers, you can kind of treat each other like shit sometimes. Yeah. And I feel like we were both guilty of that. And it was kind of time I feel like that we needed to step away. Not just to pinpoint. It was there was so much more than that. It was a lot of personal stuff going on with me. And I think musically I was just wanting something different. Not that, Davey's not that extremely different. It's the same kind of, kind of music. It's not like I went and did a total 180. I'm going to go do some freeform jazz or something like that. But, it was just something a little bit fresh,
Yeah, I know. I've had a few guests on who left bands that they were in for years, and they just had the gut feeling that they should do. It was time to move on, and none of them ever regretted. They knew then straight away that it was the right thing to do. They just felt it was time to move on,
And I mean, it was a weird thing because I was leaving Steepwater Band, and then as I was like in the process of leaving the group, Davey called me for a couple gigs.
That's crazy.
It was
a
weird
gig to get, like, because you might be thinking, I'll just play with a few cover bands on the Chicago scene for a while.
That's kind of what I was like, you know what? I that was kind of my thought, was like, I might just start a couple cover bands around Chicago. I could play around home. I could be home. One reason that Steepwater fell apart for me was that I was on the road all the time. My marriage was starting to kind of suffer because of that, and I was wanting to save it.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I could just play gigs in around town and be home every night, and not be on the road 300 nights a year. I mean, because Steepwater was playing, like 100 and anywhere between 150 to 160 shows a year, at least the last like 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you got to figure there's a lot of days. I mean, I was on the road, at least 250 nights a year.
And you guys were really successful, but you weren't like ZZ Top level where you get a big touring bus and a lovely hotel. And
no, it was
you guys were the crew and the band a lot of the time.
We were the crew and the band driving, and we were just always in a van, sharing hotel rooms, which is fine. Eric was my roomie, and we got along great. And it was, like I said, it wasn't like we had all the comforts of home, or I could afford to fly my wife out to any gig I wanted to, or it was, we were out there hoofing it and really trying to do it and scraping by. And
it's tough like that for anyone to do that. Like it is. I think you did like 2,500 gigs in your tenure in the band, or more even. Like that's
probably more. Yeah. It was a lot. We played a lot, and that's how I learned how to play. I gigged, and sometimes you would have a good gig and sometimes you wouldn't. And you don't do the things you did at the crappy gig, and you do the things again that you did good at the good one, like.
I find the playing the gigs is the easiest part. It's the food. It's killing me at the moment. In England, they have terrible like petrol stations. In America, you've got a load of choice of food, crap food and good food. And in Ireland, the same. But in England, you just have one choice: Burger King or McDonald's.
Oh man, yeah.
They don't have a deli. We have delis over here, and you guys have delis. They don't have that, so you've no choice. It's horrible. I don't know. We're just like buying salads in like supermarkets and eating them in the van. Like it's hard to stay fit, isn't it? Like and not fall.
It is hard to eat well and stay healthy on the road for sure. It's definitely a hard thing to do, and within like budget too. You know, it's like eating well isn't cheap.
No.
Where like McDonald's and Burger King is, you know. So if you're on a budget on the road, it's hard to eat well. Yeah, it's tough, but you just got to try to be smart, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've got a hack. We bring coolers with us. We all have a little plug-in cooler, and every time you get into the hotel, you plug it in, and you have all your food in the cooler.
Oh, plug-in coolers. That's a good idea.
There you go. Yeah, they're cheap. You get them cheap, and then you bring them.
How big are they?
It's like small, about 14 inches high, about 14 inches wide.
Enough to hold some lunch meat or whatever, and
everything. Yeah, loads of stuff. Your breakfast part, whatever. Like they always just think we're a bunch of lunatics with case of beer. They think the hotel are like the Irish guys with 3 coolers full of beer.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually full of salad and boring stuff.
You're gonna trash the hotel rooms or something, right?
Yeah, but really we just leave loads of hummus and stuff on the counter. Bits of lettuce crunched into the carpet.
That's funny. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that is actually our touring hack for you. Know you can use that with Davey. Are you going to come to Europe? Do you think with Davey?
I hope so. We were definitely planning on it prior to the pandemic. It was on the docket. We had some stuff in the Isle of Man we were going to play in August of 2020. I think we had a gig or two in England. I don't know about Ireland or not, but yeah, like hopefully, man. I think next year.
Yeah, Ireland's is a tough one for touring bands because you have to leave because you can get to England through the Channel Tunnel in France, so it's kind of still on that Europe. But Ireland, you have to get a ferry over, and it costs a fortune, and we don't have a massive population, so it can be a tough sell for a lot of bands to come and do it. Like,
yeah, we'll come and play that the Monaghan Festival again. That's
I saw you at that. I actually was in the crowd when you played that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Which year? Were you there?
I've seen.
We played it twice.
We played it like 7 or 8 times. So
okay.
I've probably saw it. We were doing like the bar gigs, so we were playing every night in the bar. Like,
yeah, I know I think we played it in 17, maybe. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'd have to ask Graham Robertson. He's kind of he remembers all these dates.
It's because he was sober then.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still sober, but he was. He beat me to the punch on that. I was not sober during those gigs.
You gave up the drink. What you were saying on Facebook? You're celebrating. Is it a year? A few years now?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. It's flown by.
Yeah. Was it just you decided you had enough of it? It was kind of it's definitely a great idea not to drink if you're a touring musician.
Yeah, it was. I loved drinking. I'm not gonna say like I was like this raging alcoholic. I wasn't drinking a bottle of vodka a day or on a nightly basis. I would go through phases where I drank more than other times, you know. But being on the road and having, all the beer you wanted backstage and people buying you shots and drinks, I didn't say no very often, so
musicians never say no to anything free.
And then once I have, 2 or 3, and then the floodgates usually open, and then it's like, all right, let's go. Let's have one more. And I don't think I was a bad drunk, but I wasn't, the main thing was the hangovers were really starting to just kick my ass. I was feeling like crap more often than not. And I got tired of it. And I just tried, taking a break. Like I did like we have this thing over here called dry January. I don't know if you guys do that over there or not.
Time, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We're all a lot of big drinkers in Ireland. So dry January is popular.
So I took a January off, and it actually felt so good. I went maybe 2 or 3 weeks into February, and this was right when I kind of started playing with Davey. This was maybe a couple months into playing with Davey, and he was sober, and everyone in the band was not drinking at the time.
Yeah,
and so I was like the only one. We went on the Bonamassa cruise.
Oh, deadly! That's fast.
Yeah, right. So, and I'm the only one drinking, and And no one was like giving me a hard time about it. It wasn't a, hey man, you should quit drinking, or, this band's sober or whatever. It wasn't, there was none of that at all. But I just kind of felt like there was one gig where I was just kind of like a little bit hungover for the gig, and I didn't play as well as I hoped. And I was like, fuck, like I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be hungover at gigs anymore. And I got back from that cruise. I think I went out and went to a birthday party for a friend and got completely shit faced in a great way. I had a great time till, next day felt like crap again, but I had no gig the next day. Just had to lay on the couch. And then then I went to a baseball game when the Cubs.
You drink a lot at the Yanks. You drink a lot at baseball games, don't you? It's kind of
sporting events are it's like it's all you do, right? You just drink a lot. So, but my brother and some friends of his were going up to Milwaukee, which isn't far from here at all, like an hour or two up the road. The Cubs were playing the Brewers at the baseball game, and we were tailgating in the parking lot. And I think my brother and his friends were staying like in an Airbnb up there. And he's like, well, you can come and stay with us. And I'm like, man, I'm just going to have a couple beers and I'm going to drive home after the game. Cause the game was going to get over like 10 o'clock at night. We're only an hour and a half away. I could drive home. If I only have a couple beers, I'll be fine. And I thought, like, if I have a couple beers during the tailgating and none during the game, I'll definitely be sober by the time I'm leaving. Well, of course, I did have a couple during tailgate, and then I had a couple NA beers with me as well during the tailgate. But then once I got in the game, then I had another beer, and I had too much to more than I wanted to drive home that far. So I ended up staying up there. And this isn't that great of a story, but anyway, this was the last night I drank.
I feel like this is going somewhere bad.
Yeah, but we ended up going out to a bar afterwards, and I wasn't even really like super drunk, but just too drunk to drive home. Ended up sleeping on like some dude's like sofa chair. Yeah,
there's a certain age where you don't want to be doing that. Like,
yeah, and I woke up and the sun was all super bright in this room, and I'm just like, oh, this sucks. And I drove home, and I'm like, I'm taking a break for a while, as long as I can possibly go. And I didn't really put like I'm done drinking forever. I was just like, I'm gonna try to do 6 months and see how I feel. That was the goal, was 6 months, and I went that whole 6 months. And after that, I was like, I think I'm done. Yeah,
the hardest thing to get over probably was the social aspect of not having something in your hand when you're at events and stuff.
And non-alcoholic beer helps with that. I definitely got into that, and good thing that there's actually some solid craft NA non-alcoholic beers here in the States. I think there's some over there too. I think there's
Erdinger do a really nice one. Do you know that German beer?
I've tried. There's actually a company called Brewdog. Have you heard of them?
Oh yeah, they're huge. They're actually building their first bar in Ireland at the moment.
Okay, they have a couple good NA beers that kind of got me through those first couple of months. Yeah,
just to have something in the hand so you don't feel so awkward like standing around in the bar.
Yeah. I remember going to a couple weddings, and I would have to stash my own. I'd bring my own my own NA beers in, because I knew if they had any, they would be like O'Doul's or something really terrible, something that I don't want to really drink all night. And so I would sneak my own NA beers to these weddings that I was going to, and Jeff's was one of them, and I probably drank 10 of these beers just because like. You're at a wedding, everyone's partying and having a good time. I wanted to have something in my hand constantly.
I feel like I should switch to them after I have one or two real beers, because I was actually out 2 nights ago. We did a hometown show, which always just ends up being crazy. Like,
sure,
like 5:30 in the morning or something. Too much.
Yeah. Yeah, I would do that very often here too. Like if a hometown show, like you just got ripped,
You're just like a teenager again. You're all excited.
Yeah, you're having a good time and you're having fun hanging out with your friends, and then that's when you make those bad decisions about eating too, right? Like after you've had the 10 beers and you need something to soak up all that alcohol.
Yeah, I checked my phone the next morning. That was the last thing I checked. Are there any takeaways open still at 5:30 in the morning? But there wasn't, so I don't know. I had to eat like toast or something before I went to bed.
Yeah.
But it's great. I really appreciate you coming on. You were going to play a bit of bass, but we didn't really get around. There's no.
Oh yeah. We don't have to.
Yeah.
I have it hooked up in case you wanted to hear something, but I wasn't.
Yeah, play something. Sure, play something to finish off just for the fun of it.
All right. How long have we been chatting so far?
90 minutes.
90 minutes? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not in any big hurry to go anywhere if you're not.
Cool. Yeah.
If you have more questions too, it doesn't.
I don't really do the questions. I kind of just see where it goes usually.
Yeah.
You were saying this is your first time doing a kind of a podcast thing.
It is. Yeah. Or even like a kind of like interview about myself. Yeah. I've done interviews about, like Steepwater or, a record coming out or, that type of thing, but never done just like a chat about my own personal career, like how it's evolved or where it's gone or where it's at.
I've been kind of following you since I saw you at Monaghan, so I was kind of keeping an eye on what you were doing, and then I thought it was interesting when I saw you were playing with Davey, because I see Davey all the time as well, so. And obviously, it's nice to get someone playing I get all kinds of people on, bass instructors and people from. So I don't think I've had many kind of people from the blues rock world. So it's cool to have you on. We'll see. Sure, pick up the Ripper actually, because I want to buy a Ripper, but they're gone too expensive. They're crazy money now.
Yeah, they've kind of jumped up in price in the last couple of years.
Yeah, they're like thousands. I suppose back when you started playing, they were probably pretty affordable, like a few $100 or something.
Well, I've only had this since when did I get it? Trying to think. Might have been 2018, 17 or 18. I can't remember. Maybe try to get a little more of the.
It's such a cool looking bass. Is it the grabber is the one? What's the difference between a grabber and a Ripper? It's just that you can move the pickup. Is it?
The Ripper has the two pickups, and then the grabber has a couple different pickup situations. They have like the one sliding one, which I've had.
It's a pretty cool idea. Does it work? Is it practical in reality?
I had one. It was a reissue, and it did. It was. The bass was a little bit too hot for the pickup was really hot and it didn't work well with any pedals at all.
Yeah, I hate that. I find a lot of active basses are like that. They're too hot.
Yeah. And I had it for maybe a year or so and it was all right. But I think, the grabbers have the sliding pickup and they also have ones that have like 3 pickups, almost like the staple looking pickups. Yeah. But I think all Rippers have 2.
Gibson really never broke into the bass market. You don't see a lot of people playing them.
No, I've always been really attracted to the Gibson basses. Like my first, like I said, I had that Ibanez, and then after that, I traded that for like a jazz bass, a Fender Jazz. It might have been like an early '60s reissue. It was blue. It's pretty cool. It sounded good. And then my first Gibson was an EB2, which is a hollow body with the one
EB2.
with the. Yeah. The EBOs and EB3s are the SG bases.
Yeah. Jack Bruce kind of used to play on them a bit.
And this was an EB2, so it was a hollow body, kind of like a 335 style, but a bass, short scale, one big humbucker right on the neck. Really boomy sounding. It had like this some kind of switch in it where it would either sound like almost like a stand up, like almost no high end at all, super boomy, or when you turn that off, it was kind of super bright. And I went through a couple when I first got it, I loved how big and fat that low end sounded, but it was almost too much. And then as I got a little bit better and started getting more adventurous with playing up the neck, I felt like I didn't have as much going on up there with the boominess, so I shut that switch off, and then that's when I started kind of compressing it more, and then kind of adding low end on the amp or with a pedal, and kind of fattening up that sound. So, but anyways, I had that Gibson bass. That was a '69, I think, and should probably get it back. I sold it to a friend. I know where it is.
Oh, that's good. It's good to know where I haven't sold a lot of instruments. I just had a really cool made in Japan Jaguar bass, but I kept turning it off because I kind of do a lot of kind of strumming.
Oh, and there's those switches, right?
Those little switches, yeah. So I was like, fuck this, I'm selling this.
That's funny. Yeah, can you hear it?
Yeah, sounds really good. It's coming through perfect.
Yeah, I've got like a little compression going on right now too, and it's also going through I got one of those Universal Audio Volts, those newer little things. Trying to think what they're called.
And you're endorsed. You endorse Ampeg. Did they give you the suite for your laptop?
They did.
I heard that's
awesome.
Amazing. I heard that's absolutely class.
Yeah, it's killer. I don't think I can get my Logic going right now and have that. I'm not that tech savvy. I'm pretty tech savvy, but I don't.
No, you don't need. I was just out of curiosity. I was wondering, had you been using that suite, and did you find it really good? Like,
I haven't really done it with any sessions yet. I haven't had anything pop in, but I've done it. Just messing around at home and playing with it and stuff. It's really cool, man. You can pick different cabs. There's you have an 810, a 610. I think there's like a couple different 810 cabinets you can choose from. You can get a 15. I'd say the only thing they're really missing, and I guess it's called the SVT suite. So there's like 3 different SVTs or 4. There's a classic. There's a vintage reissue that's got like a 69 and a 75 emulation going on. And then it has like the SVT Pro that's like more like the modern, like I think it's like half solid state, half like it's a 2 preamp but like solid state back end, I think, on the SVT4. But yeah, it's really cool. I would say the only thing they're kind of missing would be cool to have like a B15 in there.
Yeah, for that.
In the V4, well. But it's called the SVT suite, so I think they're kind of trying to keep it more just the SVTs. But I bet you they'll add those at some point. Yeah, I've always been really attracted to Gibson basses. I don't know why. Like I
like the look. Like it's really cool. Like original.
It's got this switch where like this is the 2 pickups out of phase. I don't know if you could really.
No, it's coming through perfect.
And then this switch is just the pickups in parallel, I believe. Yeah.
Have you got flats on as well?
Yeah. I play all flats. And then this is just the bridge pickup.
It has a very a broad spectrum of sounds. Like the bridge sounds really kind of honky.
Yeah. This almost kind of has like a jazz kind of sound, in parallel. And then this one's in series, so it adds a little bit more low end. Which I use that more than anything. Like it's almost always in the series mode where it just kind of. I mean that sounds like a Gibson bass to me.
Yeah,
this sounds more like a Fender.
Yeah.
There's also a little mid-range switch too that it's pretty subtle, but it's you can tell.
And would you ever find a lot of producers wouldn't really, they always just say use a P bass. Are the producers happy enough when you pull this thing out to play on an album?
When I brought this one in my P bass to the session for Davey's new record, he liked the P bass more for sure.
They always, because it's just so easy to mix in, isn't it? The P bass. Yeah, they always like the P bass.
Yeah, I think I might have played a couple tunes with this one, and yeah, for the most part, it was all the P bass. Yeah, it's easy, and I feel like he kind of got it set and dialed in, and he was just like, "That's the one." That's the sound we're going for. So, but yeah, I did convince him to use it on a couple tunes.
Yeah, I'll definitely, if they do a reissue or if Harley Benton do like a knockoff version, I'd love to pick one up.
I mean, keep your eyes peeled. You never know. Like I got this. I think I spent. It was under 2. I think it was like maybe like 1,500.
Yeah, that was a good price for one.
Yeah, it's a 76. My P bass cost more than that. That was $3.
Do you ever get into playing like a solo kind of bass stuff?
Playing solos?
Yeah, or even just solo pieces and that kind of thing. Did you ever get into that side of bass?
Not really so much like the jazz soloing kind of mean.
Or even just like the Victor Wooten does like pieces like where he just plays everything on the bass. Like I got into a bit myself, but they're more like party pieces. Like I wouldn't do it at a gig. Well, our guitarist having a lot of problems with these pedals lately, so I've got a chance to play a few solo pieces just to fill up the space.
Yeah, I mean I've done like, you know, like you're kind of like, all right, here's your little bass solo moment. You know, in Steepwater I had one, and then with Davey there's a tune I do a little solo in. But
what would your approach to, like, for me the best bass solo ever is like Willie Weeks. Did you ever hear that one on the one? Donna Hathaway song.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Would that be your kind of approach to a bass solo?
I've always kind of gone more the like Andy Frazier or Jack Bruce more style. Like one of my favorite bass solos is the Mr. Big bass solo from Free. Do you know that? Are you into Free at all? Or
I don't know much of their songs, but I've been told, people keep telling me I should check them out because I play up high on the bass a lot, and they keep saying, "Oh, you're like Andy Fraser," but I've never really listened to him much.
Oh yeah, man, you should check him out. It's like there's a couple. There's a studio version of it, and there are like multiple live versions you can find on YouTube. But there's the one that's on the live album. It's called Free Live, and you can sing it. Like it's so melodic, but it's mean and it's cool and it's got this like grit to it. And he played an EB3, so he kind of had like that Jack Bruce. I think he played through a Marshall or an Orange or something too. So it definitely has like that overdriven tone. And
have you ever covered it in a band? Like played that tune?
We did. Steepwater a long time ago had a song called Government Graffiti that we would go into the Mr. Big bass solo at the end of it.
So do you remember any of the parts? I'm putting you on the spot now.
It's all like, it's in E. It kind of like the guitar's going back and forth from E to D. So the guitar's going. So I think most of the stuff he's doing is like E. Is that Mixolydian?
Yeah.
So he does like a lot of. Stuff like that.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that style of bass playing. I must get in. Yeah, your bass actually sounds a bit like Geddy Lee there now. Whatever setting you have on, it's kind of jazzy sounding.
I think this kind of has like a. It has a Gibson personality, but it kind of has. I think they might have been trying to get it to be in that ballpark of a jazz bass. You know, like. Because the EB3s have like their distinct sound, and they had the EB2s, which were like a big hollow bodies, and they had the Gibson the Les Paul signature, which is like the Jack Cassidy's. So I think this bass they're trying to kind of be like a jazz bass. It has like that.
It just never really took off the Gibson bass thing. Like a few people played them, but. I'd say they don't make much money from selling basses as a company. Like.
Thank God for the Les Paul, right?
Yeah.
I always liked this one because Danko played one. Rick Danko.
I'd be more familiar with Chris Novoselic from Nirvana. He was.
He had these two, didn't he? Yeah. He had. He played these and the Grabbers both.
I think so. Yeah.
I think Danko was like kind of the first guy to kind of make him popular. At least that I saw, you know.
He has actually played at Ampeg, that weird Ampeg bass as well. Didn't he?
Yeah, the scroll top.
Yeah, did you ever get your hands on one of those? They're pretty rare.
I have a friend who has one. They're cool, man. Like they're They're definitely a little quirky. Yeah, like they're neck heavy. You would think they have that huge scroll top on the headstock, and it's got a huge neck dive. But the neck on it was kind of like a P bass, was like a real thick, maybe like a C kind of profile. And he had put like a P bass pickup in it, because I think there was one point where they did come out with a pickup that was kind of right here, but the early ones were like, they called them the mystery pickup, because they were like more like in the bridge.
It was a Piazzo kind of thing, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah. And they were just big and boomy. They didn't really have a whole lot of tone. They were just kind of trying to be like a big stand-up bass. I think they were trying to cater to that audience of musician, that maybe the guy that's still kind of locked into playing in the double bass, but he knows he needs to play electric to get into the club with everybody else.
So he can be heard, like.
Yeah, and be heard, that too. But so I think a lot of guys were putting P bass pickups in those Ampeg basses to give them a little more cut.
Were you saying Ampeg is based in Chicago? Are they still based there, the company?
No, not. They started here. They just a few blocks from here. I live in a neighborhood called Uptown, and it was on just maybe like a few blocks south of here. I remember reading. I'd have to get the book out to find the exact thing, and I know it's in my bio. I can't remember.
Oh, I read it earlier. It was like
Everett Hall, I think, was doing the stuff here, right?
He put the peg into a double bass with the amplifier in it, and then amp peg was the product.
Exactly.
That was wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that he moved to New York after that. That's where he met the other guys from Ampeg that started the company. I'm drawing a blank on names, but and they developed the amplifiers that the B15, and it's kind of cool that it's a few blocks away from me was where they kind of it was kind of born,
That's class, yeah.
But yeah, you were gonna you kind of asked about the Ampeg stuff. I guess anybody I'm not saying it's easy to get like an endorsement, but I mean, I was playing, their amps for years. I got endorsed by them in 16, or I think it was 2016. But I've been playing their basses for at least, or amps for at least 20 years. And I just wrote the guy, their A&R guy, and was like, hey man, like I'm out here kind of playing your amps already, and I love them, and I'm going to play them regardless. But I just thought I'd see if you be interested in endorsing me or working with me, And he was like, man, I kind of thought you were already part of the team. Let's do this. And I was like,
nice.
Really? Wow. So it was a really cool thing to be included in that family. There's so many amazing artists and musicians that have been playing Ampeg and been endorsed by Ampeg. It's an honor to be included in that,
And will they get you a rig if you're on tour? Make sure there's an Ampeg at the venue, or you have them yourself, kind of bring them around.
Well, when we tour here in the States, 90% of the time we travel in the van, and I have my own with me. And if we're doing overseas stuff, I guess I haven't done that with Davey enough yet we haven't gone overseas yet, so I haven't really had to work with that. But the beauty of Ampeg is that almost every backline company has them.
I've never done a festival that didn't have it wasn't an SVT like that they were using.
Yeah, so it's for the most part every backline company, every festival, a lot of gigs, touring companies will have an Ampeg, so that hasn't really been an issue yet.
Because I know the drum companies are crazy when it comes to that. Yeah, guys who are endorsed by them, they can never, sometimes you do a festival and it's in the contract that you have to use the backline. Some guys are endorsed by these companies, they're not allowed to use any other drum kit except whatever DW. So they'd have to have a bit of a argument with the festivals. Like, I'm not playing the house kit, I'm not allowed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. My contract isn't like that. I don't even know if I have a contract with them. There's nothing like stipulates I have to play Ampeg all the time. I just do if I can, But there has been a time or two where we've walked into a club or a festival, and they're like, "You have to play this amp," and I'm like, "Really? I'd rather not. I'd rather bring my own in. It's right in the van, But they're kind of insisting on it. But that's very rare,
And do you do any other projects, like apart from the Davy Band? Do you play around Chicago? I don't know what's this. My old music teacher and his wife live in Chicago, but I'm not sure what the scene is like there. They're not gigging that much anymore. Like,
oh no, I did during the pandemic. This guy Corey Dennison asked me to join his band. His bass player had left the group, and but the gigs were so far and few between still that it wasn't really like I was playing that much. But I mean, Davey had pretty much shut down in 2020. I think we played once the lockdowns happened in March. I think we played like 3 shows in October with Davey, and that was it. And then I think with Corey, I might have played, I don't know, like maybe like 10 shows that year. Now that it was fun. It was a blues gig, like a blues R&B kind of Chicago soul thing. It was fun. It was different, a different vibe than Davey or Steepwater. It was still in that blues realm, so it was still in my world, but it was cool. It took me out of my box a little bit, so that was nice.
It must be nice to be playing in a trio. Well, Steepwater was always a 4-piece, was it? You always had 2 guitars.
Well, we were a trio when we started. It was Steepwater was a trio when we started, and then we had a 4th guy who played guitar, harmonica, and sang. And then he left the band, and then we were a 3-piece for another, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. And then Eric joined the band, and then we were another two guitars. So, both have their perks, Like I think I like the 3-piece a little bit more.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a fan of playing in a band with 2 guitars because
no,
not at all. You can get away with so much stuff on the bass when there's no second guitars. Stuff that you wouldn't do because you would just be standing on his territory.
Sure.
You could just be more jammy because if you do, there's 3 of you are going to follow each other no matter what path you take. But if there's 4 people, it's a lot more brains to try and follow the same.
Definitely,
path.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's the less people in the band, it's easier to maneuver around when you're just jamming like that for sure. I guess that one person can do one little thing and you can kind of go off on a tangent, go in that direction. But yeah, with 4 people, it's harder to get everyone to go in that area.
What did you like about having a second guitarist when you were saying you liked it sometimes?
I think that the only thing I did like about it, or I wouldn't say the only thing I liked about it, but what I did like about it is that it kind of frees you up from being like so much like I gotta play. Like when you're in a 3-piece, there's a lot of sound to fill up, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say you have to constantly play. You can't play tastefully, but when you have that 4th piece, whether it's keyboards or guitar, the bass can kind of back out a little bit, and you can pick and choose your spots of what to do, and it gives you a little bit more freedom to do some different things. It's just it's a different perspective or different, But I'd have to say like I like the 3-piece a little bit more.
Yeah, it's fun. Like for the bass player, I think you get to do a lot more. And will you, for the next Davey record, will you guys probably jam stuff out? You might start collabing maybe and writing some stuff together.
Yeah, I hope so. I think so. Yeah, we'd started writing a few things prior to this record that came out, but just none of those tunes seemed to make the record. And he did a lot of writing with the producer Eric, which was cool, and the songs are really good. I mean, I really love the record a lot, and it was really fun to play on it. It was an experience because we really worked hard. I think we did basic tracks in 4 days. It was crazy fast.
And did you have a lot of tunes to learn when you joined the band? Like, because Davey has a load of albums. Is it case, you need to know his entire back catalog, or you're kind of working on the new stuff at the gigs?
It was both. It was like I had to learn a lot of songs right out of the gate for sure. And well, I was gonna tell a story, and it's funny because like he doesn't like to rehearse a whole lot.
Good man, my kind of man.
And which is cool because I mean, Steepwater didn't rehearse either, but when we did rehearse, we did like we pounded tunes into the ground until we got them, and then it was like, okay, then we never need to rehearse again. Like once we got the tunes down, you go play them live, and then they take a whole new direction live, or that's the rehearsing, that's the playing the songs through. But when I joined Davey's group, we got together and it was like, okay, play the song like twice. I'm like, man, I could love going through that tune like 4 more times just so it's like crammed in my head a little bit more. But you just kind of have to roll with stuff, how different people work, It
becomes more organic then, like the band, you get to gel with each other. And I think, what's that, Vulpec, they're kind of obsessed with not over practicing. He won't ever show them Vulpec, funk band. So when they record, he doesn't let them hear the songs at all before the studio, and then I think they just play it once, and the second time will be the finished version. He's kind of obsessed with losing that spontaneity if they overdo it, like.
And that's a cool thing, and I think for the studio, that's like when we did the tunes for What Happens Next, we weren't very rehearsed with those tunes at all. Like we even less than rehearsing for the live gigs. Like it was like we kind of went through them enough just to kind of know the changes, because we didn't know. We wanted to leave it kind of open ended for inspiration, for let the producer kind of do his thing. And after having that experience with Mark Ford, I really enjoyed having that kind of experience and being so having that spontaneity and that like you're making up lines in the spot, you might hear something in your head, you have to figure out what you're hearing and play it,
Yeah, you get it, kind of go away from the tired shapes that you play all the time when you get put into that situation. It's more free. It's like you said, you're playing what's in your head, not just letting your fingers fall into the patterns they always do.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, when I would write a bass line, I tried it. I mean, sometimes I would pick up a bass if Jeff wrote a song or Davey writes a song. When I'm coming up with a bass line, sometimes I would noodle on my bass until I came up with something I liked. But for the most part, it was I would already kind of hear in my head what I wanted to play. And then I would just have to figure it out on my bass. Like I like the bass parts to be a part. Like what I love about McCartney so much is that his bass parts, in he improvises a lot too. You can tell, like, because one verse might be this and one verse might be a little bit different. But for the most part, he has a part, and it's very melodic, or it's very much a part of the song. It's a hook, right? Like everything. Yeah. I like music that's hooky, like not necessarily pop music, but good rock and roll bands are hooky, and I like my bass parts to have a hook, like whether a person, might not, they might realize it. They might go, hey man, that bass line's really hooky, or it might just be something that subliminally hits them in their head, because bass isn't one of those instruments like a guitar part or a vocal part that everyone's listening to.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it could influence how someone feels or reacts to the other parts in the song,
Yeah, I was listening to some of the records, and I noticed a lot of times you don't copy the guitar riff exactly. You change 1 or 2 notes, or you dropped out a few notes, so that it gave it a different kind of flavor. Like instead of just being straight up playing note for note the guitar riff.
Yeah, I've always kind of do that too. Like, and there's some songs where you have to, like, I'm pounding the guitar riff. You're like, there's no other way to do this, but just hit, do what he's doing, and back him up. But yeah, I think doing that a little. I mean, like when you listen to those old records, like Zeppelin and bands like Free and the Stones and the Beatles, like that's how their bass lines were. They weaved in and out of those guitar parts, right? Like they locked in with the drums here, then they locked in with the guitar, then they played with the horns or whatever. Like it was kind of a weaving thing. And I think that listening to that kind of music so much through the years is just, kind of, it's embedded in how I approach the instrument, like I want to be a little bit different than what the guitar player's doing.
Yeah. When I'm learning some Geezer Butler tunes, or he's like that as well, very jammy. like I learned the main motif, but I don't know how these guys on YouTube transcribe the songs with all the little things. Because like when I'm writing it down, I'll be like, oh, just pentatonic, improvise. In this part.
Exactly.
Like I don't know how they copy all the little McCarthyisms, and because he just goes off on one sometimes, and you know he's just improvising. He's never going to play that the same again. Like
like Jack Bruce too, right? Like there's videos with guys doing Crossroads and the live version of Crossroads, and they got every bass lick down, and I'm like, I don't think Jack Bruce knows how to play that. Like,
no way,
he did it live and it's done. Like, it's gone in the air. It's gone.
Yeah,
like,
I can't do that.
He's just improvising in the pentatonic blues, and going off. And so I've never really learned tunes like that either. I'll do the same kind of thing. I'll learn the main riff and maybe that's a cool lick. I want to learn how to do that. Like you want to pick up some bits and pieces. I think that free bass solo I was playing earlier was like might have been the only thing I've ever like gone, I want to learn how to play this note for note because I love it, the whole thing. And even though he's improvising that too, because there's other, like I said, there's other versions that he's doing where he's playing way more notes, and it's not nearly as catchy to me. But for some reason, that one version that's on that live album is just you could sing it. It's so cool.
Yeah, that album I'm really into at the moment is the John Mayer one he did with Pino Palladino, the trio.
Okay.
I'm not a massive
Mayer,
I'm not a massive John Mayer fan, but I'm a massive Pino Palladino fan. So I said I'll check this record out, and he's playing is unbelievable on it, especially for someone who plays in a blues rock band. I'm like getting so many ideas. Like he just is doing all this crazy stuff I never thought of doing. Like really nice, interesting runs and stuff. So I did actually transcribe most of that record note for note just to get what Pino was doing. Like
that's cool. Yeah, that's a great band, man.
Yeah.
Steve Jordan on drums. He's such a good drummer, man. He just like lays it down.
He's in the Stones now, isn't he? I think he
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Some gig.
Gig. Yeah. I mean, he was in Keith's band for a long time. I don't know if you've heard Keith's 2 solo records from the early 90s, but Steve Jordan produced and played drums on those. They're really good. I don't know if you're the big Stones fan or not, but
not really. It's just a band that I haven't, I know all the Beatles stuff, and I'm a huge Black Sabbath fan, Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
I haven't got around to the Stones yet. As you get older, you're very slow to consume bands.
It's funny, like I feel like as I've gotten older, there were a lot of bands that like I didn't care for growing up. I like the Stones ever since I've been in them since I was in my early 20s or late teens, but some other bands like U2, for example. Like I never really ever got into U2 when I was a kid, in high school, when they were huge, popular. And I'm not like buying their records now, but I could hear a song. I'm like, man, that's a really good fucking song.
Yeah, the Age gets a lot of slack online, but he's actually so influential on all the session guitarists in the world. Every time you listen to a record on the radio, the guitarists are doing stuff the Edge kind of invented for producing rock songs and how you layer guitars and stuff.
Yeah, all the weird effects you'd use, or the like delays, mixing the delays together, and Yeah,
your man has a great bass collection. Adam Clayton, the bass player, he's had so many signature Fender basses. He just comes out crazy ones.
He gets a lot of crap online too he does in the bass world,
Yeah, I'd love to get him on here now, because I've seen him in a few podcasts and they didn't talk about bass at all with him. It was just like,
oh really?
Just talk about the fact you live in France and being U2, but it's like I'm sure he has plenty to talk about playing the bass. He's been doing it his whole life, like.
Yeah, and he's solid, man. You know, like he's doing his job. And I don't know if would Pino Palladino sound great in that band?
It's not as easy as you think to play that consistently for the whole night, because your mind could drift. Like that's a skill in itself. Like.
Sure, yeah. It's hard for me to sit down and play a bass line the same way, like for like 5 minutes. Like there was a friend of mine that was doing some bass line, and he was just like, I'm going to try to play this bass line the same way with the same inflection for 5 minutes. So I'm like, I'm going to learn what he was doing. So I sat down and learned the bass line, and like, I might do it for like a minute, and I'm like, all right, I'm kind of
you've got distracted.
I get distracted. Someone texts or you see, want to learn a different song, or it's so easy to not I find that when I am playing music with other people, it's easier to focus. When you're by yourself, it's so hard to not get distracted.
Do you practice much at home? Like, do you have kind of a regime of practicing?
Lately I have, yeah. When I was in Steepwater, I didn't much because we were on the road so much, and I would come home and, I was working part-time jobs for a lot of it too. Like I was working at Starbucks or doing this, like little kind of part-time jobs. So, between being on the road and working, I was exhausted and wanting to hang out with my wife and do social type of things.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to get back from tour though, isn't it? You're like, I'm so tired. I just want to sleep for 2 weeks. But then you're
exactly.
The people back home, they want you to hang out with them.
Yeah, exactly. That too. Yeah. Yeah. It's the road's a tough life. It's not for everybody, but yeah, there would be times I remember coming back from the road and like, I wouldn't take my basses out of the cases. They would just stay. I don't want to look at them for a few days,
Yeah.
But lately I've been practicing a lot. Just been trying to get better at work at least a good, couple hours a day on stuff, trying to open my mind to different things, get more knowledge.
A couple of hours is a nice bit of practice time to be putting in.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I'm trying to like learn everything I know. What I every time I wouldn't say every time I take any lesson, I'm not going to say I know everything about the instrument, but so oftentimes I pick it up and I'm like, here's this lesson. Oh, I already kind of do that. But that's now I'm focusing I'm making myself learn it because I want to know what I'm doing.
Did you ever think of getting lessons yourself, like as an adult? Because I actually get lessons at the moment from a guy, and it's really good. It's crazy because he's just pointing out all the stuff, the little things bad habits and things like that.
Sure. I probably should. I've actually signed up for like a little bit of a Scott bass lesson thing, not like the monthly deal, but like wanted just the fretboard accelerator or whatever it is. I signed up for that just to kind of get a different perspective on what I was doing. And it's just all like right now we're just doing like major triad type stuff.
That's kind of class, so that like a bass player like yourself, you've been professional bassist for how many years? 30 years probably at this stage. 20 years anyway, more. And then you're on SPL doing a course as well. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if has anyone mastered it. I don't know.
No. If you think you have, you're wrong. That's the way it is. Like,
yeah, there's always something to learn. I mean, I remember, you could watch someone playing that's only been playing bass for like, a year or two and go, wow, I never thought about doing that before. Like there's always someone to learn something from or get a different perspective on the instrument, To think everything is very. I haven't met too many musicians who think they know everything, but I guess there's probably a few that are out there.
I think the problem with the internet is you kind of end up getting sucked into all the flashy stuff. Not for people who are gigging like yourself or me, like gigging all the time, because we have to work on the fundamentals. But if you're not in a touring band, it's kind of hard to focus on that stuff because you want to learn all the flashy stuff. But you really need to focus on that stuff if you want to be a professional bassist. You need to be able to lay it down for 2 hours and just play what needs to be done. Like,
I think knowing your role is a huge thing in the bass world, right? And knowing in each band, each kind of music and each kind of band, that job could be doing a lot of different things. Like if you're in a jazz band, doing playing a lot of licks and playing really fast, or playing in a metal band playing really fast, like that. That could be your thing. I've never played in either of those kind of bands, so I don't have the super fast chops that a lot of dudes have.
I did a dip gig. Sorry to interrupt. I did a dip gig for a sludge metal band, and it was fucking challenging. Like it was just so hard to get my head around the riffs. My bass was down tuned. I had to learn all these crazy riffs, and I was like, after I was like, fucking hell, I can't wait. You really need to get the other bass player back because this is not for me. Like, I thought it would be no bothers, but every genre is really specific, isn't it? You need to really go to school on that genre of bass. Like,
yeah. And it's tough to, there's a lot of guys out there who are, can be a master of all those things, who are really well read and like, like Ian from Scott Bass Lessons. He can go play a jazz gig or a rock gig or do synth bass stuff and play in a pop band. I mean, I'm definitely way more limited in my, playing or even like my genre. I definitely have I'm in more of a box than a lot of guys, but I'm trying to open that up a little bit more, but yeah, I just want to have fun and play bass too.
I think that's okay too. Like when like you're good at your thing, and that they're very rare. Those people that are chameleons. Like Pino's like that. He's in Nine Inch Nails. He's in The Who. He's in John Mayer's band. He does all those hip hop records. There's not many people who can do that. Like just switch between the different genres and not sound like they're just trying to fit in, but they sound like they're part of it. Like
and they sound like themselves too, right? Like no matter what he's doing, he sounds like Pino.
Definitely,
yeah. Even when he's doing some John Entwistle stuff, he still has a little bit of that Pino thing, right?
It's just effortless for him anyway. It's all I learned a bunch of his fills, but it's so effortless for him. When you learn them, they're really difficult. But when you watch him playing them, I don't know. He's probably just thinking about what he's going to watch on telly later on or something. It's just no problem.
Yeah, like same with like the Willie Weeks, like you said, like you watch videos from the Donny Hathaway stuff, and it looks like he's barely moving his freaking hands, and he's so in the pocket and playing such cool licks, But he could play a blazing solo 1 minute, and next tune he's playing a groove that's so thick, and he's just repeating the shit out of that groove for minutes on end. That's a great live record.
How are you finding the course, the SBL? Do you think you'll get a lot out of it? Like, it's your first time doing something like that?
It is my first time doing like an online course like that. Yeah, it's cool. At first it was pretty easy. I was like, oh yeah, this is cool because it's like I say, it's doing like just the triads of the major scale so far, right? So your root, third, and fifths, but it's giving you the different inversions.
Yeah.
And then he's teaching you how to do those inversions within the first 5 frets and how to go around the circle of fifths with it. But he's going backwards, so it's actually the circle of fourths, which I didn't realize that it works like that. Like if you go backwards.
Yeah, I have a picture of it. That was Chris, my teacher. He was obsessed with the circle of fifths. He had one on his kitchen floor, I think. So I've always have one wherever my music space is. I can see one there now, like so. Yeah,
but I never realized that. I knew the circle of fifths, but I never realized if you went backwards, it was the circle of fourths. And it takes you right back to where it's such a cool. Music blows my mind sometimes, like how that works. Like how they figured that out, and how everything just kind of just magically kind of comes together. It's cool, but now I'm on this head scratcher where they got all your inversions, and now it's like, okay, now I want you to play it forward and backward, up and down. Just ascending and descending. And now I'm kind of like with the descending, it's kind of like trying to like, my brain's going like just it's fighting me of wanting to learn it, but
I think it's good when you pay for these. I've paid for a bunch of courses. When you pay for them, you really put in the time.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not paying for this. I'm going to practice.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like it's cool because it's taking me out of my box. It's making me learn, although I might not be doing anything I haven't done before. It's making me learn how to do it. And I'm also trying to like make sure I'm not just like learning the patterns and my hands are starting to magically go there because it's muscle memory either, right? I want to know this one, one of the main things he teaches when he's going through it all is to kind of verbalize and visualize. So like every time you go to the next step, your next scale, your next chord, you say it before you hit it. So you say C, then you say F, then you say B flat. So then you're putting words and knowledge with your hands. It's not just your hands moving magically, because you know how it is. Like even like once you learn a song, you might learn that song, but eventually when you're playing it, you're not thinking about I'm playing an A.
No.
Sometimes you're just playing it like you're in your hands go where they should, right? Like, or you might improvise a little bit, but like you're not really thinking about it too much either, which is cool.
Yeah, I got into a lot of that where I had my bass is actually here. I don't know will it come through like, but I was getting into a lot of that kind of inversion stuff myself in the last while, like, and it's not something I really thought about when I started bass originally. So
oh, that's cool.
So that kind of stuff is cool when you're learning the inversions.
Uh-huh.
Without doing these online courses, I never really kind of got into it because I didn't hear it that much in the music I was learning. So that's what's really cool when you discover these new techniques that you don't hear in the records you're into yourself. Like,
sure, and it might not be something that is really like something you would want to throw into a song but it might be something that you have fun playing at home, or you can apply that to a song and not play the chords, but just pick out the notes. Or it's cool when, you learn something and then you can apply it, maybe manipulate it a little bit to fit into what it make it work, But at the same time, you don't want to force it.
No, you don't want. I definitely found a way to start incorporating those chords. But in a 3-piece, like we discussed, you can kind of get away with anything.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be playing bass chords if there was an organ player or a second guitarist, because they'd be filling up that space. Like,
what kind of amp do you use live?
I've gone through a bunch of Trace Elliott's, but I have 5 broken ones, so I don't use them anymore. So I'm using TC Electronic. I don't know where it is now, so I just find them really reliable. They sound good, probably not as good as the Ampegs, but they're just super reliable. Never had a single one, because Ireland, it can be pretty cold sometimes in the winter. It's very damp, not ideal conditions for storing amps and stuff in bands.
Yeah.
So TC, just because they're really reliable. It sounds really good, but because I went through Warwick and Trace, and they just kept breaking, because we do 100, used to do 110, 120 gigs a year as well. Like, and I've had amps go on fire and everything while I'm playing. Like, the tweeter went on fire, the smoke started coming out, but I was still able to play the amp.
The tweeter?
Yeah, the tweet, because I use loads of fuzz. Like, so the tweeter started burning and the smoke was coming out, but I could still finish the gig.
That's funny.
So yeah, it's all reliable for me. Like,
I've had an amp smoke up on stage before. I had an old my first proper bass amp was a Sun concert bass head.
They're cool. They're really cool. All the stoner rock bands use them.
Yeah, and it was like a late 70s head, and the cabinet was cool too. It was a 215 cabinet that had like this reflex thing, so it had like baffles that kind of like it was almost kind of like a sub type of thing, like where you got the back of the speaker coming out. I think acoustics were like that too, kind of, right? But acoustics were almost all that. Like the speaker wasn't even facing forward. Is that correct?
Yeah. I never saw one. Obviously they're famous because Jacko played them, but the company kind of just disappeared then.
Yeah. But yeah, the Sun amp, I had that, and I remember I was playing that at a gig, and next thing you know, I see smoke coming out of it. And that was a solid state thing too. So I think it might have gotten like a power surge, or who knows what happened, or maybe transformer fried up. I don't know. But
I nearly had an amp destroyed one night doing a pub gig. This guy put his pint on my amp.
Oh no!
And it was shaking, so like I got really pissed off, and I like took his pint off him, and like I just pushed him, said just get lost, like, and he went crazy, like shouting abuse at me. So he got thrown out by the bouncers, and then he just stood at the window of the venue shouting in abuse at me. So that the police walked past, and they're like, "Are you all right?" And it turns out he had loads of cocaine on him, and he got arrested.
Oh wow!
I was just playing the gig. I said, "Well, serves you right for putting a pint on my amp." Like.
Wow. Yeah, I've lost many beers that way, like putting them on my amp.
Oh really? Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that usually.
I stopped doing that after maybe like 4 or 5 vibrated off. And then you make it through the one gig where it doesn't go anywhere, and then I could do this again. But then the dumb idea. But I'd never lost an amp or had anything damaged because of it. Just lost a beer,
Yeah, I'm sure the Ampegs are very reliable as well. Probably like the TC the TC stuff goes through a lot of. I think they leave the amp on in a shed. Is it Norway that they're based, or somewhere up there?
Okay.
And I think they leave the amps in a shed turned on for like a year.
And
then come back and check is it still working.
Before it's sold, it sits there for a year.
Part of it kind of when they're doing the prototypes, kind of like for the quality control.
Okay.
Because my amp, I know when it's really cold, it has some kind of bypass. It won't make a sound. It won't turn off mute until it has got to a certain level.
Until it warms up.
Yeah.
Huh. Is it tube or solid state?
Just solid state, but it has that cool feature. Like
that is cool. Wow.
Because sometimes you open your case over here, your base would be like wet, just covered in like condensation. So I can't imagine what that does to the electronics inside in your amp.
Yeah.
Like.
I used to keep a lot of my stuff in the van and everything too, like in the winters, and I don't know, I never really had much of a problem. I got lucky, I guess. I mean, every once in a while you gotta, amp goes out and you gotta get it serviced and retubed or whatever, but luckily I've been pretty fortunate lately with that luck. And my pedal board too. I used to keep my pedal board in steep water. I don't think I ever really took much out of it at all because we were in and out of the van. Like I would come home and I'd only have 3 or 4 days at home before I went right back out in the van again. So I'm like, why do I want to drag all my stuff back home just to put it back in the trailer again? And I just left it in there, whether it was, 90 degrees out, which it could be, Chicago weather is all over the place. It's, in summers it could be 90 or 100. And then in the wintertime, it could be, -2. It's
crazy. Yeah. The difference is that, actually, do you still go to Buddy Guy's, Legends? Is that still going? Does he still play?
It's still open, yeah. Yeah, it's still open. He still does a residency there in January. He does he plays the whole month of January, almost every night.
That's crazy. He must be nearly 90 at this stage. He's in his 80s at least.
Yeah, he's definitely in his 80s. Yeah, he still goes out and tours as well. He's a busy dude.
You've probably met him. You've met him, have you, over the years?
Yeah, a few times. Yeah, I mean, briefly. I didn't really chat it up with him too much, but yeah.
Yeah, I saw that you. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say I saw you played with T Model Ford, and a few people I know met him once, and he heard he's an absolute character. Oh,
he's a character. Yeah. He told us we were downstairs in the green room and the venue called Double Door, and he told us, he's like, you better put a stamp on your ladies so I know which ones are yours, or I'll be hitting on them.
I was about to say that's what it was always about, the ladies. He was a funny guy, because he came over here and toured, and he did a load of tiny venues. I was thinking, but I suppose if you're a blues guy, you'd have heard of him, but the general public wouldn't have enough people knowing who he was to sell out venues and stuff. But he was in his 90s. And he was chasing all these Irish girls at the gig. I was thinking, this guy is hilarious.
Yeah, he's a character for sure. He was cool though. Yeah. What was this drummer's name? So it was just him and a drummer, I think, right? Did you go see him?
I saw him. That's kind of the Fat Possum Records, that record company. Yeah. That's kind of a thing, isn't it? You don't have a bass player, you have a drummer and guitar singer.
Yeah, like that North Mississippi blues kind of vibe with him and T Model Ford and who's the other guy?
You have what's the guys with the mask? Bob Log the Third. Have you seen him?
Bob Log, yeah.
But even before
him, who's the?
R.L. Burnside.
R.L. Burnside, and all those dudes. That was definitely a scene, yeah. No bass player, maybe even sometimes 2 guitar players, but one guitar could kind of do the bass a little bit.
I have to say I'm a massive fan of that type of blues. It's probably one of my favorite type, even though there's no bass, but yeah, it's really cool, especially R.L. Burnside's. He did a lot of albums with hip hop guys and punk bands near the end of his career, and those albums are really cool.
Ass Pocket of Whiskey and all that, those records. Yeah, I have those, yeah. Yeah, Steepwater was really when Steepwater started, we were really influenced by a lot of those but we had I wasn't about ready to walk out of the jobs, but we were influenced by. We had a bass player. We tried to kind of. We were as influenced by that as we were Chicago blues or Southern rock.
Yeah, it's kind of very groovy kind of music, isn't it? That type of blues has a certain kind of lazy kind of beat to it always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a tune called Steepwater tune called "Down in Chicago" that has that kind of R.L. Burnside, T-Model Ford kind of vibe.
And have you seen Bob Log perform before? He's
I haven't
brilliant.
seen him. I've seen videos and stuff and heard songs, but yeah, he's see the guy that has the telephone mask.
Yeah,
thing?
we played with him before, and we went out for pints with him after. But sure, no one knew who he was because when he has
Once
the
he
mask
takes the mask off, yeah.
But it's for anyone who hasn't seen him. He comes to Ireland all the time. He was actually here a month ago. He wears like an aviator helmet, and he puts a phone in the helmet, and then he wears
sings through the phone, right?
Sings through the phone. He wears a leather jumpsuit, with "My shit is perfect" written on the back, and then the guitar is wireless. Everything is wireless, so he comes through the crowd at the start of the gig, and he plays the drums with his feet. And then when the gig is over, he just walks off stage. Oh, and of course, his party pieces, he always gets the women to come up and stir his whiskey with their nipples. That's
oh, jeez.
I know he's married man, like, but he doesn't when he's on. This is just a stick that he does. Like he's completely chilled out then backstage. It's just a character, you know. You put on the mask and you do the thing. It's just a character. It's nothing else. Like, but sure, it's just like that. Playing music, a lot of us aren't. Like, we're extroverted on stage, but a lot of us are introverted off the stage, isn't it? It's not like real life being on the stage. It's something different. Like, you know, you can just do whatever.
Yeah, for the most part, most musicians are, and even rock stars are nerds, right? Like, we're all nerds.
Yeah.
We just figured out a way to maybe get, you know, get out there a little bit and maybe, you know, try to pretend we're rock stars or a character on stage, like you said, you know, like. In fact, sometimes I think I used to kind of imagine that I was a different person. Not really like I'm I guess I would more like think about my idols, you know, like this bass player or that bass player, and kind of like, you know, emulate them on stage and almost take me to a place where I wasn't myself, you know, in a weird way. But yeah.
Do you still enjoy playing like every gig, or you never like phone it in would be the wrong word? Do you still get the same joy out of just doing a gig as you did like 20 years ago?
Definitely. And I think even more so now that I'm sober. Like, I think that has, you know, I don't know if the drinking before was part of why I would have a bad gig every once in a while, or maybe even a bad gig playing, but like you'd walk off stage kind of like going, that gig kind of sucked, or, you know, I didn't have a good time. Was because of a hangover, or you're tired, which some of that still happens, you know, like whether, you know, sober or not, the road's not easy, and, you know, you can still have bad nights of sleep, or just the routing, you know, in America, man, there's a lot of space in between cities, and there's a lot of times where we got to drive, you know, after the gig, or, you know, you got to drive 8 hours and do a sound check, and you're just cooked by the time the gig gets around, you know, but but I mean, for the most part, I love playing live. I miss it every time that we're not, you know, I like to have some downtime and home time, but when I'm not playing, I miss it, you know. Like, the pandemic was pretty brutal.
Really? You found it? I didn't have to say I was busy I was doing this podcast, and it was just nice to be at home for so long. So
yeah,
I think other musicians found it harder than I did. I suppose this podcast kind of gave me something to do, like, you know, apart from gigging and stuff.
Yeah, it is a cool. So you started this during the pandemic?
Yeah, it was just because of the pandemic, just something to do, like.
Yeah, that's cool. Keeps you busy, keeps you musical.
Yeah, I was doing one a week, like, for nearly a year, so that I only do one a month now, like, so it was all I was doing pretty much, like.
Yeah. I did it for a little bit. I think I did like 10 episodes. I did a little like radio show.
Oh, cool.
Where there's a website called Mixcloud where you can upload, you know, your songs or whatever, upload covers, you know, like, it doesn't have to be original music, and they pay the royalties or whatever to the artist that, you know, wrote the songs. And I did a radio show of nothing of my vinyl. So I had to have it on record, and I had imported everything from my turntable to my computer, and then, you know, overdubbed a, you know, DJing voice type of thing. And it was pretty fun. Yeah, it kept me busy, you know.
And you stopped it now. Coincidentally, I used to have a radio show here in.
Oh, really?
We have like these things called hospital radios. So the hospitals have a radio. They have a little studio, and and they have a small antenna which goes a few kilometers outside the hospital, and it's for the patients and the town. So I had one with my mate Pascal, but we got a phone call yesterday. They want us to come back and do it again. So
that's cool.
Well, yeah. I'll see. It was fun, but also it's a bit another commitment of get enough songs together every week and get it all organized. But you're finished with your one now. You're not going to go do any more.
I was going to do more this past winter, but I didn't get it. I wasn't feeling it because it was a lot of work. Like, because you have to import all the songs in real time, right? Like, you know, you can't double speed a record and then slow it back down again. So every song would have to be recorded on my computer in real time. And then if it skipped, or, you know, I wasn't happy with, there was too much dirt on the needle after the track, I'll do it again. So I got a really clean copy of it because I wanted it to be really good. And then, you know, so that would take me like a day or two just to do the music. And then it took me and because I'm not a honed radio DJ, it would take me another day or two to do the voiceover type of thing, because I would do multiple takes. And, you know, with, like you said, like your reference of recording at home, you know, you can endlessly, you know, overanalyze things and not just, you know, roll with it. So I was probably too hard on myself and took way too much time and you know, making sure that my voice was perfect, or, you know, this or that. But it was fun to do. It was a lot of work, but it was fun.
Were they like deep cuts or something that you couldn't download the tracks to save you time? Like,
well, I could download them, but I wanted it to be off my records. I wanted it to be spinning my vinyl, and I also wanted it to kind of, for a couple of reasons. One, I have a decent sized vinyl collection, and I wanted to use it, and I wanted to share that with people. And I also wanted to have like a limited amount of music I could play, right? Or if I really wanted to play a song, I had to go buy the record. I couldn't just download any song, because then you're limitless of what music you can play on this radio show.
That could be a bad thing as well. You're like, I could pick any song in the world.
Yeah. So now I had to pick songs of what I actually had or what I could buy. And so that it was cool. It was fun. It was just too much, I think. And I wanted to, I think around that time, when I did it, it was like a year ago. And it was when like COVID was really bad again, and we had kind of gotten shut down. Like any little gigs I did have were totally, completely shut down again. So it was like just staying at home doing nothing. And I was just like, man, I got to find something to do. And I was also like, it was a weird time, because I was like, man, do I play bass? But it was almost kind of like depressing, like to play it, because I knew that there weren't any gigs coming, and it was nothing to, like, not that there wasn't a reason to practice. There definitely should have been, but I guess I just didn't find the inspiration. It was, you know, kind of a depressing section or little few months. And so I found this radio show to kind of like and it got me back into music. I wouldn't say it got me back into music. That's because I never got out of it, but it got me more into it again. You know, like it really got me listening to songs and wanting to share these songs with people. And it was cool, you know, like, so I've always just been a huge fan of music and bands in general, you know? So, but now it's like, I rather practice.
Yeah. You might do it next winter if you're at a loose end, you know?
Yeah. I might do it again. It's definitely not going to rule it out, but, I might, it's I'd rather play music than be a DJ.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that after we stopped doing it. I was like, sure, I'd rather be playing the music than be interviewing or, you know, the DJ as well. Like, this is different. It's talking about bass all the time. So
yeah.
We were having a lot of local musicians on. It was really good fun, but then we ran out of musicians, and I didn't really want to do it anymore if there was no live element to it. I liked having the people in, talking to them and playing, but because we live in a small town, it's around 10,000 people, we ran out of musicians very quickly, and we're like, what are we going to do now? Well, we didn't run out. We ran out of people who were brave enough to come on, and because we used to kind of give people a bit of a roasting, you know, with the questions, we'd be messing. So
that's cool.
Cheers, yeah. I'm going to hit the road here now. It's 10:30 in Ireland. It's like 4:30 in.
Yeah, it's like 4:30. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have a whole day ahead of you.
Yeah, have dinner here pretty soon and just chilling out. But yeah,
Cool.
you have an early gig, early day tomorrow, or do you have to
Uh,
wake up for anything?
I
Or
work for this organization. It's actually paid for by you too, Adam Clayton, and
oh wow,
it's like a music teaching thing. So I run the bass department
oh cool,
in my area. So I just have a meeting in the morning about what we're doing with the bass department. We want to do a
all right,
showcase of the students. So we have to. I did the whole course like private. It's all the video course. I also did that during lockdown. It's not on the internet. It was for like the company. So
uh huh,
I did the whole like how to play 15 videos on how to play the bass. Like, and I wrote all the music for it. So it's no.
wow, that's
I didn't do
awesome.
any covers. So I wrote all these rock songs and played organ and bit of guitar and just made all the tunes like different riffs and stuff,
That's
teaching them
cool.
different parts of bass. Like so
That's
I
awesome.
suppose that was kind of a lockdown. You kind of forget the things you did, like, but yeah, that definitely kept me busy as well because I never edited any video before this, so I was learning how to edit videos. So
Uh huh.
God, it
That's
took
cool,
me
man.
ages. It took me about a week to make each video because I was going crazy with the production value. I was like zooming in and getting all angles and things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've seen a few of your videos that you're like you had one about fuzz or
Yeah, I
something
had
I
a
was
fuzz one.
watching.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, they're well done.
yeah. I'm not doing too many of them at the moment. I'm actually studying doing a masters in bass at the moment, music's masters. So
Oh wow.
that's my focus at the moment, having time for video editing. But in the
Uh huh.
summer, I'll start doing it again. Like,
That's cool. Nice. Yeah, you should get Adam on this thing since you kind of
yeah,
you work for him, right? Or
yeah,
I
I work
guess.
for him. That'll be my my in. I'll be like, employee here wants you to come on and chat about bass. So we'll see. Like, I've got a few contacts now for some guests coming up, but I don't have any I should. Ireland is tiny. Everyone knows everyone, so
Uh
I'm
huh.
sure I'll meet someone in the pub some night and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure. Here's Adam Clayton's number. Work away."
There you go. But he said he lives in France now.
Yeah, I think they all live in France. So
Okay.
a lot of rock musicians live in France. It must be. I don't
Doesn't yeah,
know.
Jerry lives there too, right? From Roy,
Yeah,
yeah.
Jerry lives there, and you too, and bunch of. I never found the music scene to be like super vibrant in France in terms of gigging. Like for
Uh-huh.
myself, anyway. I don't know. Did you play there a lot?
A few times. If I think Steepwater played maybe like 4 or 5 shows in France. Kind of
Yeah,
yeah, same thing. Like a few of them were. There was one gig we played right outside of Paris that was good, but the rest of them were kind of
they go to
uh,
bed incredibly early. It's like what the hell? Because
not
it's
like
funny.
Spain.
Like it's so funny. Like they're right beside each other, the two countries. But as soon as you cross the border, no one's going to bed until 5 or 6 in the morning.
I
It's just
know.
and they're sleeping at 4 o'clock in the day siesta. But they're legends in Spain. The only thing I couldn't get my head around was when you do a gig and they're like they want to give you your dinner at midnight, and you're like, no, I can't. I'm not eating dinner at midnight. Just
Yeah,
I have to
or
eat it
like
now.
right before the gig,
Yeah,
literally like you're going on stage at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and here's your meal. You're going on
yeah,
stage in a half an hour. Eat up. That's the worst idea ever. But
yeah.
you got to eat, right? 'Cause you're not, if you don't eat it, then you're not going to eat at all. So
I feel
I
like
find.
Spain. I feel
Go
like
ahead.
Spain is like 20 years in terms of the rock music being as popular. It's 20 years behind everyone else in a good way.
Yeah,
As in
yeah,
rock music is still as popular there as it was in the rest of Europe 20 years ago.
yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, I think I think they have a pop scene too, like with the mainstream people, of Spain. But like, there's definitely an underground rock thing going that's really cool. Like
Hmm.
of those mid-sized, venues from 500 to Steepwater would play like small little town in Spain, and it would be a 60 cap room, and it would be jammed
Yeah.
like asses to elbows of people just crammed in there. You're thinking like if there's a fire, we're all doomed.
Yeah, we've done that. It's so cool because it does. You would think, oh, every country in Europe is going to be like this. It's not. It's just
No.
Spain. It's the
Yeah.
only place that has that.
Yeah, it is. It's a cool. It's definitely its own thing.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
love it. But yeah, cool. I'll see you over here with Davy Knowles.
Yeah, man.
He actually plays. We're playing the Rory Gallagher Festival in 2 weeks,
Oh,
and
cool.
Davy's done that a few times. So hopefully
Nice.
they might get him over as the Davy Knowles band because
That'd be
I know
great.
In Europe Jerry has a different band, doesn't he?
Uh
Davy
huh.
just does the Rory thing in America.
Yeah. I think he did play in Monaghan with Jerry.
Yeah, I saw him at that. That was his first gig with Jerry. Mm-hmm. It was cool. It was in a hotel. Good gig, really good one.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is really an honor to be on. Like you've had some amazing musicians and bass players on this podcast already, and honored to be included in the group.
Sure, no matter, Matt. You're one of those now. You were one of those. So that's why I asked you on. Like, so I'll put all your links down below anyway, so people can check you out. Your radio show, even if you send it on to me, I'll add it.
Yeah, I will for sure. All right, man. All right, you have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.